bit like having an opening statement? I mean, I'm the one technically, I
Yeah.
guess, challenging Andrew,
Yeah.
right? So
I think we should do that. You make the first opening statement. Andrew will give the second one, and then we'll go right into the open portion. But yeah, guys. So this is going to be a fun debate. Let's keep it at least semi-respectful in the chat. I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes. These are two pretty good debaters. So let's see what happens. All right, Kevin. Yeah, you can kick it off with your opening statement.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm just going to read off this Google Doc here. So in previous debates on this topic, Andrew said, and I quote, "Women only have rights because men allow them to have rights, and women can't make decisions about their own rights because they can't enforce their own rights." So basically what Andrew is saying here is that there's a fundamental power indifference between men and women that precludes women from physically enforcing their own rights and must always appeal to men to enforce those rights. This, Andrew claims, is a paradox. If women do in fact get equal rights, it will be because men allow them to, which then logically necessitates that the women never really had rights in the first place because the men could easily say no to the women and there's nothing the women can do about it. Thus, men and women are fundamentally unequal. I think this shows a fundamental misunderstanding of power, more specifically how women actually use power, and Andrew's conception of power and influence is coming exclusively from a masculine worldview. And here's what I mean. The dictionary definition of power is the following: the capacity or ability to direct or influence the behaviors of others. And as an example of the most obvious way of exercising your power, I want to give you guys a little bit of a thought experiment. It's going to sound kind of ridiculous, but bear with me. It'll make sense in a second, okay? So imagine there's two guys standing on an island. One is Andre the Giant. The other is Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito wants to create a whole system of ethics and rules for them to follow while they're stuck on the island together. And this requires Andre to follow a system of rules which he doesn't like and he thinks is annoying. So Andre the Giant is just like, no, I don't feel like it. And there's literally nothing Danny DeVito can do about it, obviously, because of the size difference. However, let's expand this analogy and say that there's actually 100 inhabitants on the island. The same event occurs. Danny DeVito comes up with his code of ethics. Andre the Giant rejects it, except this time, Danny, being the clever little man that he is, appeals to the rest of the inhabitants on the island. Nobody's even close to being the same size as Andre, but Danny is super likable, gregarious. He's a fun guy, and he wins the hearts of the people of the island to become their leader. Danny then decides, Andre the Giant, you're not really pulling your weight. Start actually working for us, or I will kill you. How can little Danny DeVito make a threat like this? He has the power of numbers on his side. No matter how powerful Andre the Giant is, if even 10 of the 100 inhabitants on the island try to physically subdue him under the influence of Danny DeVito, Andre has no shot. I bring this little thought experiment up to prove to all of you that power doesn't have to be just physical. In fact, that's actually the lowest form of power. Real power is having an influence over those who can enforce your will on other people. So this begs the question then, how do women play into this? Women exercise power in a very similar way that Danny DeVito did in that thought experiment, except it's actually even more subtle than that. The book, The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, in that book, he states that some of the best seducers throughout history have been women. One more thought experiment to prove my point. This one will be quicker, I promise. Let's take the Danny DeVito example again, and let's say he has no problem with Andre the Giant's lazy ass, but then the hot girl of the island, driven by her hypergamous nature, hooks up with Danny, because he's the one in power, and becomes his girlfriend. Let's just call her Stacy. Stacy doesn't like Andre. She thinks he's creepy and lazy, so she influences and seduces Danny into making Andre the Giant work, or else he's going to get kicked off the island. In this situation, who is the one with the power? If you said that it's anybody other than the girl, you fundamentally do not understand power as a concept. This doesn't just need to be a thought experiment. This has actually been happened multiple times throughout history. Cleopatra had the ear of Julius Caesar and used Julius Caesar to conquer her enemies, more specifically her family. I'm not going to do a whole history lesson here. There's also someone named Madame de Pompadour who basically ran all of France, even though she was basically a prostitute. She was like King Louis XV's favorite courtesan. And there's many others too. If you want more examples, just read The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. I'm sure a lot of you guys already have. Another example that's very relevant to this discussion. Women only gained the power to vote in the United States because of women, not because of men, as I'm sure Andrew probably believes. The 19th Amendment, which gave the women the right to vote, resulted in a tie. The tiebreaker being a young Tennessee legislator named Harry Byrne, who initially was going to vote against women's suffrage. Then his mom wrote him a letter and basically shamed him into voting for women's ability to vote. And that's what he did. And then the law was passed. And now today we have the, for better or for worse, women can vote because of that happening. Now, in that situation, Harry, technically, the Tennessee legislator, is the enforcement mechanism, because unless he votes yes, women will continue to not have the right to vote. However, you would be extremely naive to think that Harry was the one in power here. Do women need men to enforce their rights? Yes. Does that necessarily mean that men are the ones in power? No. To directly respond to Andrew's claims that women only have rights because men let them have rights, women only have rights because the people in power allow them to have rights. The people in power are not always men. On paper, it might be, but as the story of Cleopatra, Madame de Pompadour, and the mother of Harry Burns shows, to think that the ones who are the leaders on paper are always necessarily ones pulling the strings is a very naive way of viewing the relationship dynamics between men and women. So yeah, that's my opening statement.
Cool. Andrew, kick it off to you.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just kind of taking notes as he was going. That was kind of a gish gallop, but I'll try to get through it all. And then we'll get right back to the fundamentals of the argument. And Kevin's going to lose again because he's brought literally nothing new to the table. So here, let's just go through this real fast. First part of the argument, he's wrong about. He says there's a second half that Andrew hasn't thought about, this fool, this idiot, which is that... he brings up this Danny DeVito, Andre the Giant thing. Notice how both the people inside of this analogy are men. He gives you a weaker man and says the weaker man is maybe better at subterfuge or public speaking or this type of thing. So other men, he can control other men to go enforce the things that he wants. Well, no shock to me. This happens all the time. I literally have there's no shock value in that for me. He points out that women can manipulate men in order to enforce their rights. I agree that that's also true. I've been through this now, I don't know how many times. I don't know why he hasn't picked that up, but I agree that both those things are true. But it still doesn't change the fact that the rights themselves are enforced by men, which makes it paradoxical to say that we can have egalitarianism with women, which is the crux of the position to begin with. Some of the fundamentally flawed thinking that Kevin here has when it comes to power dynamics is a claim that I don't understand them. You just think it's raw force, Andrew. Well, no, I don't think it's just raw force. I just think that when it comes down to it, the enforcement arm of whatever it is a person's will to power is going to be force. It has to necessarily be force. Laws have to be enforced by force. Will has to be enforced by force. If your machinations and manipulations and things like this don't work out and you have to then bank on the law, you have to use force. There's no way around it. So, I mean, kind of with that, I think we can get into it, but let me end it with saying that another fundamentally flawed part of Kevin's argument is he talks about this legislature who was the deciding vote in women's rights. But he actually messes up and he says, at this point, Harry was the enforcement arm, but he wasn't the enforcement arm. He was the lawmaker. All the police and all of the military and all of those people who are largely designated as men and still are to this day globally and always will be, were the actual enforcement arm. So if those men had said, no, we're not going to go and give women the right to vote, well, Harry would have been fucked, right? And that's just the truth. So kind of with that, I'll open it up, but I sure hope there's a better argument. I'm hoping.
Let me just make a very quick statement. So I'm going to be generally hands off during this debate. I will only step in if one person is literally unable to talk because the other person is interrupting so much. I will allow for a little bit of interruption as long as within reason. Or two, someone is clearly dodging a question, in which I will step in and ask them to answer the question. Other than that, you probably won't hear much from me during this debate. It's just going to be mainly Kevin and Andrew. Okay, guys, kick it off.
Why does the enforcement arm matter?
Because how do you have rights without enforcement?
Okay, that's fine. But you're acting as if
I asked you a question.
No, you didn't.
I
just said that you
my,
don't have
my
rights
exact
without
words are,
enforcement.
how do you have rights without enforcement, Kevin? Answer my question.
No, you need enforcement for sure.
You have to have
and to give you
enforcement
credit,
for rights.
Yeah, to give you credit in your previous, I don't think that in your previous debates you said that rights are a social construct. I totally agree.
There's not even anything left to debate. You're not going to have any.
No. There still is. There still is. There still is.
All right.
Yeah. Because me as a Nietzschean, my fundamental worldview is the will to power. I believe that there's always these forces of power that are constantly clashing against each other to try to will themselves. Sometimes they'll integrate that smaller power, or they'll just take over completely. No, my issue is that I don't think that the enforcement mechanism, so let's say these men, for example, is even remotely relevant, because the enforcement mechanism can be anything, and really what matters at the end of the day are the people at the top of the hierarchy that are making the commands.
It can't be anything except force.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Well, then
I think you actually just dodged my question.
You just said it can be anything, Kevin. The enforcement mechanism.
No. Yeah. Hold on. Force is implied within the word enforcement mechanism, right?
Well, then it can't be anything. It's force.
Yes, it is force, and I'm saying the people who are doing the force could be different. Okay, so for example, it doesn't even need to be people.
What are you talking about, bro?
No. Hold on. If I had a nuke, what's more effective, a nuke or an army of men?
It depends on the situation.
Okay, so two armies are two places are about to go to war. Let's say the United States. We have nukes, and then you have Iraq, or whatever country that doesn't have nukes. Yeah, but has an amazingly large army. I mean, you can see that in the second Gulf War.
In that situation are better. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the enforcement mechanism doesn't necessarily have to be men.
No, it's force, and it's men in both those situations.
No, it is force. Yes. It doesn't have to be men with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, it does.
Why? Explain.
Because you can't have women who are entrusted to nuclear arms, because men would have to entrust them with them, Kevin.
Well, okay, so if the
name me the nation of women with nukes, Kevin. Where's the nuclear proliferated nation of Amazonian badass spear chucking women, Kevin? Where is it?
All right. So back in 2016, if Hillary Clinton, God forbid, I didn't vote for her, but God forbid she was the president, then she would have the power there. For sure.
No, she wouldn't have the power. The enforcers would always actually have the power.
Like the nuclear launch codes and stuff. She is the...
Yeah, that those go through a chain, and then men have to turn little switches, and they have to push little buttons.
And you understand
she doesn't just press
you understand chain of command,
stuff.
Right? Hold on. You understand chain of command, right?
I do understand
chain of command. You have to follow what your superior officer says.
What's a mutiny?
Of course, I know what a mutiny is.
Okay, well, if you know what a mutiny is, what if people say to Hillary Clinton, what if men say, "No, bitch, we're not gonna launch the nukes, and you can go fuck yourself"? How would Hillary Clinton enforce her power except to go to other men and tell them to make these men launch the nukes? Can you tell me that, Kevin?
Yeah, she'll send other men to go.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so, I'm not disagreeing with you on the enforcement mechanism. Hold on. No, I'm not. I said in my very statement,
then there's nothing.
I'm not against the enforcement argument.
There's nothing to debate then, unless you can. Here, let me break this down.
Oh,
unless you can. Yeah, I'm sorry. Take care of your ring light, but listen very closely. Unless you can explain to me how women have rights outside of the enforcement, and that the enforcement arm can be something other than force by men, you don't have anything to debate with me on. Nothing.
No, yes, we do. Yes, I do. It's because the people at the top of the power hierarchy, the ones who are actually manipulating and causing the people to actually enforce those things, that is where the actual power game is held. Okay. So if somebody at the top of a hierarchy, right? So who has more power? Napoleon, or let's say Napoleon with his army, or let's say some Yahoo with an equally strong army.
Interesting that you bring up Napoleon, for instance, because even in this example, you would be wrong. Napoleon was a revolutionary, and he, as a general, gathered a bunch of men to oppose the power structures of France before he took it over and declared himself the emperor. And then a bunch of other men from another nation under Arthur Wellesley decided to whip up the entire British military, and the whole world went to war with Napoleon of men, I might add. What do you mean when you're talking about enforcement, that there can be anything?
My entire point, please, Andrew, I don't know if you're being deliberately obtuse, but look, my entire argument is that power comes from the top and it trickles down. Right. So can you please, you keep going to the enforcement mechanism. We already agree there. What I'm saying is power comes from the top. Hold on.
Yeah,
power comes from the top,
okay.
And women can influence the power at the top. I gave you historical examples: Cleopatra, Madame de Pompadour.
So what?
What do you mean?
That doesn't
what?
contend with the argument for the last time, for the 300th time.
That is no. That is their way. That is women's way of willing their power and willing their influence.
Kevin,
is by manipulating men.
Power comes from the bottom, Kevin. Now contend with the argument.
No, it doesn't.
Like who cares?
No.
Like who cares? Contend with the argument. How do women have have rights outside of paradox if the enforcers of their rights can only be men, and men are the only ones who can actually will men to power? No. That's where you're wrong there. Okay, you had me up until that point. Men are not the only ones who can will other men to power. Stop, Kevin. I misspoke. I didn't mean men are the only ones who can will men to power. I just mean men are the only ones who can enforce the power of will. That's what I mean to say.
Well, let me actually, I want to provide clarity. So, Kevin, do you agree with the statement that men are the only ones that can enforce power, or no?
Historically, yeah. I mean, you could make the argument, and I said it a little bit earlier, of like, okay, well, with modern technology, which was invented by men, you could have nukes and stuff that are commanded now by women, thanks to the labor of men. That's true. My argument is not the enforcement mechanism, because at the end of the day, what this argument is about. Yeah, yes, there is.
No, there's not.
At the end of the day, what this argument is about power and the fundamental differences between men and women and how they interact with each other and whether they're equal or not.
They can't.
And I would say,
I think I understand what the disconnect here is. So let me just quickly try to sum it up. So Kevin is arguing that then when it comes to power, right, when it comes to rights, the people who are enforcing are less important than the people at the very top, right? The people who are giving the orders. He's saying those are the people who are in more positions of power. And if those people are women, like, Hillary Clinton could have been, or Kamala Harris or whatever, then, women do have a lot of power and then can give themselves rights. Again,
I gave myself a bunch of historical examples.
They only have power.
Andrew's provided zero. The only argument you've provided is a monolithic argument of like in previous debates where you say, oh, if all men collectively banded together and said women don't have rights. Name me one time that's ever happened in history, Andrew. Ever.
It happens in Muslim nations all the time. Would you like me to go through the Muslim nations that's happened in?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, well, let's start with Iran and the Shah of Iran and the overthrow of the Shah of Iran, where women did have rights, and now they don't. They don't have any because men collectively got together and said, fuck you, bitch, you don't have any. Do you dispute that, Kevin?
No, hold on. It's the men that it wasn't all men, right? A lot of those men were still fought with the women because they were influenced by the women. Now they lost,
so what?
Sure.
So what? So women were appealing to men to enforce their rights again.
Yes, exactly. No, you're making my argument. You're making my argument for me. My entire point is that is the way in which women exert their power is through manipulating men. The entire manosphere space is a result of that, of the manipulative nature of women who are able to control men. Now, just because that it's not
that women can manipulate men, Kevin. Nobody's ever disputed that, Kevin. It's never been disputed once by me, Kevin. Ever, Kevin.
Yeah, so why are you deliberately? Why are you deliberately avoiding my argument that power comes from the top?
I'm not sure.
And in which women could have. Hold on. Wait, do you agree with that statement? Wait, Andrew, do you agree with that statement? Yes or no?
Kevin, calm down. Let's try this. Whether or not it comes from the top or the bottom or the left or the right or diagonally, or it comes from outer space fucking aliens, or it comes from groundhog people, I don't care where it comes from. All I know and need to know about power dynamics and how they work is who the fuck enforces them, because you don't have any power outside of who enforces your power for you, Kevin.
Yes. Who enforces it, and then who influences the people that enforce it. That is the thing that matters.
But there's the trick with the paradox, isn't it? Because that would mean that the power that you think you have is illusionary, and really it's only dependent on people who have real power, and the people who have real power would be any male collective which opposes you. Then you're fucked.
Yes, it's male collective that has a hierarchy. Do you agree that any male collective will always have a hierarchy? Yes or no?
Of course.
And the hierarchy, the person at the top, chain of command, like we talked about with armies and stuff, is the one that's actually giving the commands. Yes or no?
Sure.
Yes. Okay. So that necessarily, you just basically admitted then that power absolutely comes from the top, and that is the most important aspect of it. And what I'm saying is that women can and do oftentimes throughout history. Again, I have historical examples that I listed out earlier of them having influence of people at the top of the hierarchy, which then trickles down, like I said. It all comes down to up here. It doesn't matter down here.
The thing I've never disputed and doesn't even fucking matter to any of the points that I'm making.
Sure, it 100% matters.
How does it matter?
It matters because your entire point is saying that women don't have rights.
Well, let's say, for instance, it was tumbled 360 degrees, and somehow it was logically possible that power came from the bottom instead. It always had to come from grassroots. It couldn't really come from the top down, right? It wouldn't matter, really. All it would matter is, how do those people then enforce power? And the answer is going to be what, Kevin? How would they do it? How would they do it? They would do it
I think you're strawmanning me this entire time.
They would do it by using enforcement.
When have I ever said, Andrew, when have I ever said, please list it out to me, that you don't need an enforcement arm? I literally said earlier in the debate that it is within the entire word itself.
You did, which is why I told you there's no debate, and you're just still going on. I don't know why. There's no debate. You already agree with me, so I don't even know what you're talking about.
No, I do not agree with you.
You do.
In the slightest.
You just don't know.
No. You think that it starts from the bot, or you don't. You actually admitted, I should say. So you can see that power comes from the top.
There's no admittance to something that's obvious. It just doesn't matter.
Okay, let me see.
Power comes.
It doesn't matter. How did you understand? It doesn't matter where it comes from.
Guys, let me see if I can bridge the gap. So what I think the disconnect is that in terms of power and rights, Kevin believes that it's the people at the top who largely matter. He acknowledges that enforcement is predominantly male, right? He believes that's less important than the people at the top. And I think, Andrew, what you're saying is that who's at the top is not as important as who's doing the enforcing. Did I sum up both of your arguments correctly?
Yeah, whoever's doing the enforcement is actually the people who are at the top, regardless of who you think is at the top. Whether they know it or not, the enforcers are the people who have the power. We know this because when they stop enforcing, you no longer have any power, since those are always going to be men. Always going to be men. Men are the ones who necessarily give rights to other men and other women. So my entire proposal here is just simply that egalitarianism with women is impossible and paradoxical. I still haven't actually heard an argument from Kevin for how any of that is incorrect. Not a single one.
So I said it a million times. I don't want to keep repeating myself. I'll give an example, I want to ask you a question, actually. So women have the right to vote now where they used to not. How did that happen? In the U.S.
Yeah. So essentially, a bunch of communist agitators began to fund and form the Suffragette Party, which was supposedly a grassroots movement, but really wasn't a grassroots movement, in a push towards giving women the vote. And then there was anti-suffragettes who pushed against that. And it was a political fight over basically voting rights.
Okay. So it wasn't a bunch of men who were just sitting around one day being like, you know what? We men are all powerful. Women can't vote. You know, it'd be a great idea if we could just get women to vote, get women to start voting. You agree that that's probably not what happened, right?
Well, I mean, that would be an oversimplification, but I do think it was mostly men who were behind the movement. Yeah.
You think it was mostly men behind the movement to get women to start voting?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is known. Yeah, that's known. Who do you think funded it all? It was all funded by men. It was pushed by male media outlets.
Okay, fine. So what was the motivation behind that, though? What was the motivation behind that?
Behind moving women? Why? Because of the tax base. They were looking to double the tax base, essentially.
Okay, but women were already still working back then, weren't they?
Not the numbers that no, not even.
Well, hold on. Income tax Income tax didn't exist until I think 1920.
Why would income tax matter? You can
because you just mentioned the tax base.
Yeah, but that would just mean more people who are inside of your nation who are buying goods. You tax the goods.
They're still buying good, like they're still buying goods. What are you talking about?
Yeah, dude. Look,
women were still working back then. So it's different to say women's working rights versus voting rights. They were already working back then.
So no, they weren't working in mass back then. I don't know what you're talking about. They weren't.
Really, during the Industrial Revolution?
Yeah, they weren't working in mass.
Women in the...
There were women who worked, but they weren't working in mass like men were, no.
And the thing that changed it is...
And by the way, it was men in Congress. Movement? It was men in Congress in 1913 who passed it anyway. So, I mean, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Bro?
Influenced by women. My entire point is that all of this
They were mostly influenced by dark money and men, not women. But even, let's just say for a second that they were... But let's just say for a second that they were completely 100% influenced by women. 1,000%. There wasn't a single man who influenced even one of those congressmen. Not one, Kevin. It was all women, and they manipulated these men into giving them the fucking rights that they wanted to.
No,
let's say they passed it. Let's say they
strawmanning
passed
my
it.
position.
Let's say they passed it the next day, the very next day, and then they said to everybody, women can now vote. And then all the poll workers and all the police officers and all the military were like, fuck you, they cannot. What would it have meant? Would it have meant anything, Kevin? Would the law mean anything if nobody enforces the law?
Okay, so no, what ends up happening then? You keep speaking in monoliths and as if like all of men. When have all of men?
When you're talking about women's right to vote, that's a monolith. Women's right to vote was a monolith. What are you talking about? That was an actual monolith.
No, I'm talking about the enforcement. The people who would say, "Oh no, we're not allowing this."
Yeah,
what do you think would happen, Andrew?
No.
Let's actually go with this. Let's actually go with this thought experiment. So, what do you think realistically would happen if all of the if a bunch of the men, it's impossible to have all the men, a bunch of the men said, "Hey, actually, no, women don't have the right to vote, and we're not going to allow this." What do you think would realistically happen after that?
I think realistically that Congress would probably reconvene very quickly and pass a law in order to keep their power in place to repeal it as quickly as possible. That's what likely would happen. Same thing that happens now when men decide not to enforce the laws that are going on in the book. For instance, let's take the Black Lives Matter riots. When police officers refused to respond during Black Lives Matter and the riots that were going on thereof, there was laws that were there that were being broken all over the place. But there was nobody around to enforce anything for you, Kevin. So what happened then is that people started to enforce their own shit. They started to enforce their own moral codes. They started to enforce their own morality. They started patrolling their own neighborhoods. They started doing this kind of thing. Why did they do that? Why did they do that?
You're making my point for me. I think you're making my point for me, and you don't even understand that you're doing it right now.
Well,
my entire point is, hold on. No. The entire point is if you did have people who resisted against that, and then let's say in this scenario, Congress, they wouldn't reconvene. They've never reconvened after passing a law and repealed it immediately. And in fact, I mean, you think of things that pass in American history, like the Whiskey Rebellion, stuff like that, like they will quell that rebellion. So instead, what they will do is they will gather up their men, and then they will have a fight in a war.
Yeah, because the army did it, right. But if the army said, no, we're not going to go quell the rebellion, then what, Kevin? Then what happens?
I don't know.
Then your law doesn't. You don't know because your law doesn't mean shit. Your law doesn't mean shit, Kevin.
You keep going into these scenarios that have never happened and will never happen.
It's never happened that there's been mutinies. Okay, Kevin.
It necessitates that all men collectively band together, which never happens.
Never has necessitated that. In fact, it only necessitates that small groups of them do so. They can ignore orders. They've done that in the past. They can have glorious revolutions. They've done that in the past. They can fight off the British from an entirely different continent like they did in our past. They can have a civil war and ignore the laws of the land like they did in the 1800s, Kevin. They can do all kinds of fucking things to ignore the enforcement arm or become a brand new enforcement arm. This idea that you have, this stupid fucking idea that you made up out of the blue, which makes no sense to me, is, no, Andrew, power comes from the top. And so these are complex power dynamics. Okay, fair enough. They're complex power dynamics. But all you need to know what's true is who enforces those power dynamics. That group necessarily is going to have the power. There's no way logically around that. If you can give me an argument against that, which you can't.
I can, and I have previously, and I'll do it again, but I'll do it from a different standpoint this time. You have one, we agree that it's impossible to just have like all men agree on one thing. Whatever. There's always going to be some sort of resistance who are also other men. Yeah. So these two different armies are always going to be clashing.
Yes.
It necessitates that there's going to be conflict, right?
Men can take men's rights away and give them. Yes, that's correct.
Yes, these two armies end up going to be clashing against each other. Now, what's going to determine? Hold on. What's going to determine which one of those enforcement arms win in the end?
Whoever has the biggest guns.
That is a naive way of looking at it.
Really? Why don't you give me a historic example where that wasn't the way it was looked at? Because that's what's always happened every single time.
Germany lost in World War II.
That's right.
They had better technology and they had better guns and
they took on the whole fucking world. The entire fucking world, and the Soviets invaded. So what happened when you had two different men, right, who had two different ideas about enforcement, and the men went to war? The men killed. I mean, you're talking about 2/3 of France, which died between World War I, World War II, who were males. The men were still in charge of France, even though the women were ridiculously as far as a ratio, outnumbering the French men. They were taking on American husbands and everything else, but the men still had the power because the men were still the enforcement. The men are always the enforcement. You say,
I don't know if there's a little bit of
hang on, Kevin, let me finish my point. Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point, and I'll kick it back to you. Again, for the 300th time, yes, men will fight over power, but they're ultimately the enforcers of what your rights are going to be, and they're the ultimate enforcers of what the law is going to be. They always are. There's no way around that. Even if you have Cleopatra in power, she's going to be relying on men to do the rights enforcement, Kevin. There's nothing you can do about that.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
So I don't know what to tell you.
This is like the 5th time that I said that I didn't disagree with that.
And there's nothing to argue with me about for the 300th time.
There is. I think you just don't want to admit to conceding the point. That's really what it comes down to.
There's no point for concession. What's the point I'm supposed to concede on? Let's try with that. What am I supposed to concede on?
The point you're supposed to concede on is that power comes from the top, and power from the top can and has been influenced by women. And your entire argument is that doesn't matter because the enforcement arm is always going to be men.
Never disputed it. In fact, it's part of the
that it can be women at the top?
Yes, of course. It's part of the crux of my argument, Kevin, for the 300th time.
When?
It's been stated over and over that women can influence men in order to enforce their rights. That would necessarily include a woman at the top of some fucking arbitrary hierarchy. It doesn't matter. They're still going to be banking on men to enforce their rights, Kevin.
Yeah, so
then egalitarianism is an impossibility, always.
No, it is a possibility. Yes. You just proved it right there, is that men and women express their will to power differently. Women do it through manipulation, men do it through force. If the women are the ones that are manipulating the men, who is at the top of the hierarchy? The women. Boom. Debate's over.
They're not at the top. They're not at the top of the hierarchy. If the banking of enforcement of men can instantly turn around and take away all of their enforcement mechanism for their power. They're still endlessly begging men for their rights. Even if they're queen, the empress of the whole world, empress of the galaxy, it wouldn't matter. They're still going to endlessly be begging men to enforce their rights. Men themselves, though, they don't have to do that. They don't have to because they're the enforcement arm themselves. That's why traditionally you always see men in power. There's not much you can do about that, and there's not much you're ever going to be able to do about that.
Sure, that tends to happen, but that doesn't necessarily. I feel like I keep repeating myself. The entire point is that
you're not arguing with my point.
No, you're not arguing with my point, dude. I've cogently I've
conceded laid out exactly what I said. I've conceded everything you've said. It just doesn't mean anything comparatively. It doesn't mean anything to what I'm saying. Why don't you understand this? The paradox exists, even if I concede all of Kevin's points, which I've never run away from. I've always said it's true. There's nothing to argue. What is there to argue? What are you talking about?
The paradox is debunked.
No, officially. The paradox is
if you accept everything that I just said, the paradox is completely debunked. So let me bring up the paradoxes again. And again, direct quotations from you so I can debunk it to your face once more. Okay. Let me see. Where is it? Sorry, I have a lot of notes here. Okay. Women only have rights because men allow them to have rights. So that was one quote. Women can't make decisions about their own rights because they cannot enforce their own rights. Again, I said at the beginning of my statement, these are claims that I fundamentally disagree with because the way in which women influence men.
You got one of those wrong.
Okay. You got the first one right. I'm pretty sure
but you got the second one wrong, which isn't that women can't make decisions. It's just that whatever decisions they make, they're going to be appealing to men for the enforcement of whatever that decision is.
Okay. All right.
So that you understand.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. I mean, that one I agree with. Again, I agree fundamentally
you agree with everything
that for the most part.
There's no actual disagreement here.
No. Because I think the issue is, okay, maybe you agree with me. I'm trying to be as charitable as possible here. Maybe you agree with me that
I don't care if you're charitable. The debate's over. There's nothing more to debate.
Yeah, you conceded all my points.
That's because they don't address anything. Like it
addresses everything.
You haven't answered to the paradox, man.
Yes, I have.
This can't. Okay, so let me try it this way. This can't happen in reverse. You understand that? Like this can't actually happen in reverse. So women.
Explain, what do you mean?
Yeah, so women could never appeal to women for their rights. They can never appeal to women as an enforcement arm for their rights. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, for the most part, I'd agree. Yeah.
Okay, well then you're done because that's the paradox. You dumb fuck.
How is that the paradox? I like how you're saying that I'm a dumb fuck when
You're a dumb fuck.
When you
I
just
don't know
got
what else
beat
to
in
tell.
a debate by
I don't.
me.
I literally.
So what does that
don't know
make
what
you?
else to tell
If you just lost the debate to me, what does that make you? If I'm dumb,
you can't lose a debate to somebody who's not even talking about your position, Kevin.
I
You're
am
not even talking.
I am
about
saying.
It. You're like.
I am saying from the beginning.
Yeah, here's Kevin's debate style. Do you concede that blue is blue? Yeah, I just won the debate. It's like low tier sophistry. You're still not. You're not. You never actually have addressed this descriptor
I address
for
it every
reality.
time. Every time you say that I don't
Power
address
comes
it,
from
I
the
address
top.
it right to your
Who's
face.
the enforcer?
Yes.
Men. Got it.
Yes, and you're presupposing with that statement right there that the enforcement mechanism is the one that matters the most by far. And I'm not saying that that's the case. Again, that's coming from the bottom of the power hierarchy. You're saying the bottom of the power hierarchy is the most important. I'm saying the top is the most important. The bottom of the power hierarchy can change, and it's malleable. Throughout history, it's been men because there was no technology. But as I stated earlier, with modern technology, it could easily be something like a nuke, or maybe even more in the modern day, like digital warfare or something. Who knows? Like, who knows what the future is going to be like? What matters is the people at the people at the top, who most certainly can be women, 100%.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I literally don't know what else to say to you. You haven't actually answered to the paradox, Kevin. In fact, you agreed that women can't appeal to women to enforce their rights. They can only appeal to men. Therefore, egalitarianism actually necessarily has to be impossible. Why do you not see that?
Andrew, maybe you can just one more time, like, explain the paradox in a very succinct way.
I just did, like, the most succinct way possible. Here's the paradox. The paradox is that men never have to appeal to women for their rights, ever. They never have to. Women always have to appeal to men, and women will never be able to appeal to women for their rights because women can't enforce them. Kevin agrees with all of this. He agrees literally with everything that I'm saying is a descriptor for reality. I don't know, since he agrees that the paradox is there, true egalitarianism can't exist, which is my point. Do you have a single argument against that, Kevin?
Yes, I've said it so many times already. Let me try this another way. Let me try this another way, because you're a smart guy, Andrew, so I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. You just don't want to lose. So, all right, let's take an example of somebody who, let's just say that every single common man or whatever has an IQ of 10, all right? Mm-hmm. And then you just have one single super smart person with an IQ of 200. All right, so who's the one in power there? You think the person with the IQ of 200 is going to easily be able to manipulate all of the masses of people with an IQ of 10, no matter how many there are?
Probably, at least a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. And so who's the one in power there? It's the person at the top. That person at the top can absolutely be a woman. But more specifically, what we see throughout history is it's usually a man, and some woman manipulates that top man. This is also my speculation as to why...
Right.
Hold on, one second. Yeah. One more thing. This is also my speculation as to why I think women are naturally hypergamous. They will. Yeah,
I don't care about the women being hypergamous thing. I care about the argument. So on to this, unless women being hypergamous has something to do with your argument.
Yeah, it does.
What
women being hypergamous is the thing that helps put them in positions of power to influence the men in power, who then influence the enforcement arms. And that way, that's the way in which the women are able to exert their power.
All right, so let's try it Let's try a different way, because I don't even think you understand what I'm saying. So we'll try it this way. Where does Kevin think rights come from?
They're social construction. I agree with you on that.
Okay, where do they come from?
Nowhere. I mean, basically, it's like, okay, well, again, so my sort of worldview is the will to power. So there's all these different wills or collection wills that are constantly clashing against one another. I basically think that any sort of morality is actually a cope. Morality is not real. I
don't care about that. I just want to know about rights. Let's just focus on this one thing so I can see if I can break this down the easiest way possible.
Sure.
So we agree that rights themselves, or at least we'll agree with it for the sake of argument here, that rights themselves come from nowhere, right?
Yes.
They're socially constructed and they're made up, right?
Yep.
Okay, so a right is actually just the ability to enforce it, to enforce your will.
Yes.
Yeah, so if your right is your ability to enforce your will, which sex can do that?
Both, because again, whoever commands the levers of force, or whatever you want to call it, that's what matters at the end of the day. So whoever is in power of that thing is what matters. It's basically like saying, like, let's say that I have a, I don't know, I have some.
I don't disagree that women can't manipulate men into enforcing their rights, but this again is paradoxical. So try to contend with it this different way. Now that I have your grounding and you kind of understand this basic concept, assume that a god comes down and gives you all of his powers except like one, right? And it's the power to take away your godhood whenever they so choose. Are you equal with that god? No, you're not equal with. Why aren't you equal with him though? Even though you have all the things that they have, minus powerful. Because he can take away your godhood whenever he wants, right? So who has the power?
Exactly.
So who has the power? The person who is God, right? Who can take away the power anytime they so choose, not the person who thinks that they have.
The problem with this, I know where you're going with this, Andrew. The problem is that you're presupposing the argument, which is the entire point of the debate. You're presupposing the idea that men are the ones that give women rights, and that's the thing I fundamentally reject, and that's the thing that we've been arguing about this entire time.
I didn't presuppose.
You're presupposing right there. Okay, tell me where that line of thinking is going. Go ahead.
Stop. With this hypothetical itself, I'm just asking you about the nature of egalitarianism. So if we're talking about the nature of equality and the nature of egalitarianism, you would agree that if there's a mechanism which can be taken away from you by something that has the degree of capacity to take it away from you, that you can't actually be equal with that thing. In this case, it would be the same thing with the power dynamics between men and women. That's what creates this great paradox, the paradox of rights. You're only saying that if women are able to manipulate men into utilizing men's power on their behalf, that would be like the person who tricks the higher deity and tricks them into giving them the same power until the deity realizes that they can take it back whenever they want. It was always paradoxical.
Okay, so let me use a little bit of, I don't know, maybe Christianity or whatever to sort of prove my point, because I think the Bible itself, now I don't, granted, I don't understand the Bible as much as you do, although I did go to Catholic school. They don't really teach you shit there in terms of Catholicism. But anyway, okay, so the devil, the devil, how does he have power in the world? You agree that the devil has more power than human beings, right?
No.
As a Christian.
No.
You don't think the devil is more powerful than human beings? No. And then but by the grace of God.
In fact, the opposite's true.
Okay, so how did the devil seduce Eve into, taking the apple and then influencing Adam to take the apple?
You're talking about something that has vast complexity. If you're talking about the fall of man from Eden, it's not just the devil, it's the failure of men, and it's the failure of Adam and Eve to exercise their power and will to God, right? But they had the power to reject Satan. Satan had never had any real power other than what was willed to Satan.
Yeah, hold on. His power was the seduction. He seduced them into doing what he wanted.
Yes,
right?
And that can be done. But ultimately, the great paradox there is that they never had to do it, right? So this is the paradox. Well, that's the paradoxical nature. Women fucking have to do it. Do you understand the difference? They fucking have to. They don't have a choice. Like, they don't get to be like, no. That's the paradoxical nature.
Sure. I mean, in different
Adam and Eve
ways,
could just look at
sure.
No. Now pretend that Adam and Eve had the devil who was there, right? And they were like, and the devil went, "No, you fucking have to eat the fruit." Grabbed the fruit, shoved it in their face, made them eat the shit. Just stuffed it in their face. You have to eat it, right? That's the difference. That's the paradoxical differentiation.
That's the entire point. The fact that you brought that up shows that you are taking this 100% from a masculine worldview, which is why this doesn't make any sense.
It makes total. Listen, I'm telling you, women can't say no. They can't say no if men decide they have no rights. They can't be like, yes, I do. They can't. They can. Men can, but women can't. So you can't have egalitarianism.
It doesn't matter. You keep treating both of them as a monolith, right? The vast majority of
I mean, in this particular case,
what gives you rights? Men
would
Andrew,
be.
What gives
men
you
would
personally?
Be as the enforcement, basically a monolith.
So, what gives you personally, Andrew, any sort of rights?
I don't think I have rights.
Who's bestowed that onto you?
I don't think I have rights.
So you don't think any human being has rights? I'm not saying like ontologically, I'm talking like specifically like within the confines of the law, let's say, which is a social construction.
Yeah, so just enforcement. That's it. That's all it gives you rights is force.
Yeah, from other people, right?
Men, yeah.
Yeah, from other men who are higher up in the hierarchy. Not necessarily
they don't necessarily need to be higher up in the hierarchy, no.
Well, how else would they enforce their will then?
With a bullet.
Yeah, because they're at the top of the hierarchy.
No, they're not. They don't need to be at the top of the hierarchy. In fact, they can be at the top of the hierarchy, and someone who's below them can still kill them with a bullet.
Yeah, but they're probably going to be defended by people who have more bullets. And also, if they're at the top of the hierarchy, they're pretty smart, so they know
that hasn't been all the
happen.
social revolutions historically. They've had plenty of defense, and still the population's able to bring them down to their knees or kill whoever's in power, or completely if they create an entirely new power structure where men again are at the top.
No, yeah, exactly. The same exact thing repeats itself, where there's a new establishment in place and then there's a new hierarchy in place. The people at the top of the hierarchy still end up calling the shots for the people below at the bottom of the hierarchy.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with any of that. What's your point? The hierarchy at the top's always meant, though. It has to necessarily be.
No,
it always is.
The hierarchy at the bottom. No. Look, okay, so this is where we can probably agree, and I think we both agreed to this earlier, just in different terms. The bottom of the hierarchy, the enforcement arm, always has to be men for the most part.
Yes.
It's possible in the future it might be able to be women too. Again, just with technology and all
that. So that is the real hierarchy then.
No,
the real hierarchy.
That's the bottom of the hierarchy.
No,
you just admitted that it's the bottom.
No,
about the top, which is what matters.
Stop. It's not. The real when you're talking about a hierarchy, you are talking about a monolith then. You're talking about a singular organization or a singular monolithic piece that has different parts to it, different pieces, so you're saying only the crown is the important piece. And I'm saying the crown, hang on, let me finish. I'm saying the crown's important, sure. Okay, but the reason that if you go and you read like Machiavelli, right, that he talks about this often, how it's actually better to be feared than loved, for instance, is because oftentimes in the Prince especially, as they discuss these different groups kind of taking out the crown or having some type of social revolution to get rid of whatever the existing hierarchy is to instill their brand new hierarchy. That's men essentially enforcing whatever they think is their right.
Got it. I'm glad you brought up Machiavelli.
Or this type of thing, right? That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing.
Hold on. I'm glad you brought up Machiavelli, the author of The Prince. So the Prince that he's talking about in that novel, did he have the largest army that allowed him to get to the top, or was it something else?
Well, he was talking about multiple princes throughout the book. So
yeah, but there's one main one, Cesare Borgia. Cesare Borgia was the main one that he's talking about in that book. Yeah, and he was actually created.
Yeah, so I haven't
created that book.
I haven't read The Prince in years. But get to your point.
My entire point is that in that book itself, it establishes that a good leader at the top is what wins wars and what wins influences, not the enforcement arm or the largeness of the army. It's the person at the top, not the person at the bottom.
I don't disagree. There's still no disagreement with this.
You said that you do disagree because you say that it's the enforcement arm.
We're talking about again the principle. What's the principle we're talking about? We're talking about the principle of egalitarianism, equality. Do you understand that? Do you understand that the crux of this entire thing is based around egalitarianism? Men and women are equal. So if the crux of this is men and women are equal, whichever part of this hierarchy that you point to doesn't matter. I'm saying they can't be equal. That's the paradox, because their enforcement will always come from men. They can never actually be equal to men. That's the whole point. That's the entire argument.
Andrew, I don't think. Wait, Kevin. Let me see if I can clear this up. Andrew, I don't think Kevin is saying that men and women are equal or that we should live in an egalitarian society. All I think he's getting at is simply that women can be in positions of power, and therefore it's not as easy as men just take rights away from women. Did I sum up?
And also, based on the way that they express their power, they are able to will themselves to get rights through the manipulation of men. Yes.
Did I accurately describe what you believe?
I understand what he's saying.
Okay.
But the reason that this has been very frustrating for me is because he doesn't seem to understand that when we're taught the whole thing revolves around equality and egalitarianism. What I'm pointing out is the illusion of equality, the illusion of egalitarianism. I'm pointing out that it's an illusion for women to believe that they have rights that don't come from men, because they actually can't have rights that come from women. They can't. You understand the paradox there? They can't do it. And you've agreed over and over that they can't do it. And so then we get into like talking about all kinds of shit that really has nothing to do with that.
Okay. So
hang on. Let me finish and I'll give it to you. So then you say to me, you're like, concede this is true. And I'm like, yeah, sure, that's true. Concede this is true. I'm like, yeah, sure, that's true too. Well, there's no debate. It's like, there's not really, because I don't think you disagree with my point.
I do. I've said multiple times over and over again that I do.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody watching can rewind it if they want to. Okay, let me try to frame it this way. At this point, I'm not. You're just. I'm not trying to influence you. Maybe the audience or something at this point. But okay, maybe just try to make it more understandable. Okay, so let's say that there's a black. So when you go to war, let's say this medieval times before guns are invented, whatever. You need a blacksmith, right? A blacksmith is the one that's creating the weapons. The blacksmith is technically the one that has the weapons, right? Weapons are the thing that kill people. All right, but are the blacksmiths the ones in power? No, the people who the blacksmiths work for are the ones in power. They could easily just take the sword away and then kill the blacksmith, and then but what you're saying is that it's almost like the blacksmiths are the ones in power because they're the ones that technically have the force to begin with. I'm saying that force can easily be taken away through manipulative means, such as what women do.
There's no disagreement. So I don't understand why you don't get that. Like, there's no disagreement on any of that, because we keep saying there is, but I'm like, but I agree with this. But the descriptor of reality still doesn't change as to the paradoxical nature of people can't force their own rights who say they're equal with you, the people who can. That's insane. Don't you understand that's insane? Don't you understand that I can concede to all this like externalities that you bring up, and it doesn't actually solve this paradox? Like, this paradox has been around for 2,000 years.
It's not a paradox.
It is a paradox.
The entire point, if we wanted me to go really deep here, I can actually make this as an example of Christianity itself. How did Christianity will itself to power in the Roman Empire and take over the Roman Empire? How did it happen?
Well, I mean, that's complex, but the empire itself was somewhat decadent, and it didn't really take it over. The empire split into two. And you had actually two different branches basically competing against each other. So,
okay, so let's say, sorry, real quick. Let's say the Western Roman Empire then, not the Byzantine Empire. Let's say the Western Roman Empire, which still existed about, I think, 200 years after the Byzantine Empire existed. So within those 200 years, paganism was supplanted by Christianity. How did that happen? Did it happen through brute force with sometimes an enforcement arm, like you said?
Yeah, it happened a lot of times by brute force. Sometimes it didn't happen that way. But what I think mostly happened was that you had male evangelists, like the apostles and things like this, who would then evangelize the other men who were inside of those societies, and then those men would begin to follow those moral codes and lay those moral codes down, and then other men would begin to either adhere to those moral codes or they would be prosecuted under those moral codes. The enforcement arm would always be exactly the same, though, across the board. It always is.
Yeah. So the way in which basically what you're saying is the way that the Christianity willed itself and took over the Roman Empire was largely through non-force means that weren't through force. Because every time that was, and the way that which it happened, if you guys want my viewpoints on this, where I come from with this, I encourage you to read The Genealogy of Morals by Friedrich Nietzsche. But basically, the slaves, right? The Roman society was mostly slaves and like a few masters. Yet every single time, and they completely outnumbered the masters, right? Yet every single time the slaves tried to revolt, they would get crushed, right? Because the Romans at the top were so powerful, they could command armies, they could hire mercenaries. They were very strategic, whereas these slaves didn't really know how to fight, right? So the way in which Christianity proliferated,
not during the gladiator rebellions. That wasn't the way it was in the gladiator
rebellions. They got crushed. Hold on, the gladiator rebellions got crushed. Eventually, yes.
Eventually. Yes. But the thing is they were also heavily outnumbered. They were outgunned. They were outmanned. And oftentimes when they're fighting in 5-to-1 odds, they would win. So the thing is that, again, though, this is men pitting against men for the dominance of power and rights, which is always the case.
Yes.
Every single time.
Yes, this is different. Hold on. I'm talking about Christianity, though. With Christianity, the way that it spread and the way that it took over was not through that. It was through appealing to the hearts and minds of the people rather than the masters.
Men, yeah. Correct.
Yeah. Well, both. But yeah, basically.
No, it was the men.
There are a lot of women who were...
Go ahead. Name a prominent woman of the time they were appealing to. Go ahead, Kevin.
I don't know. My entire argument is that a lot of these women you'll never know.
There isn't one.
The entire point...
That's why.
Look, the entire point of what I'm saying in this argument is that women express their power differently. For all the women that I listed earlier,
I don't disagree.
there are probably tons of women who
I've
had
never
a
disagreed
major
with this.
influence on men. Okay,
don't
let me
disagree with
give you
that
this
either.
example. Constantine's mother, what was she? Was she Christian or no? Constantine.
I don't think she was, because Constantine was the one who was converted, right?
I'm
don't
almost
remember.
positive Constantine's mother was.
Maybe
Christian.
she was. I don't remember. I don't know.
Yeah, somebody can look that up really quickly.
Yeah, but Constantine converted to Christianity. I know that was like the big deal.
I think he converted because his mom was Christian, or that was a big influence, right? So that's
sure.
even just that. If that's true, then that's case in point right there that Christianity
That women can influence men.
helped.
Yes, nobody's disputed that for the 8,000th time.
Yeah, they can influence men.
Yeah, we know,
and
Kevin.
they can influence the enforcement arm, which is the entire point of the argument.
They can,
right?
They can influence it, but the thing is that if the enforcement arm says no, women have no recourse and men do. That's the point, Kevin.
They do have a recourse.
What's the recourse?
If the
men say
enforcement
no,
arm said you're acting as if there's only one enforcement arm, right? The entire point of what we kept
you keep on switching, you keep on
this.
changing what I'm saying, and you do this over and over and over again.
That's
so try this again.
If this ain't the pot calling the kettle black, I don't know what is.
If men decide that they don't like the status quo, they can enforce a different status quo, and women can't. They can't
and
do that.
And they will be met with resistance.
By other men.
Yes,
that's correct.
Who a lot of times could also be under the influence of women as well, especially
even
if
if
it's
they're
something
right. But even if they're under the influence of women, this is part of that great paradox, which is that even if they're under the influence of a singular woman or a singular man or whatever it is, women can never appeal to women to enforce women's rights collectively. That it can't be done. Do you understand that? They have to enforce it through men.
They can, from the standpoint of they can all collectively come together and agree to manipulate their men to get what they want, which has and does happen. Actually, this happened, I think, in the 90s, or actually it might have been sooner. But you remember that really like cringy thing?
It can happen. I've said this again. It can happen. The point being, though, is that they can't have this enforcement mechanism through women. Not that women can't manipulate men who are the enforcers of rights to enforce their rights, because they can. Rather, very simply, women can't go to other women to be the enforcers of their own rights. Only men can be the enforcers of women's rights.
Physical enforcement.
Well, that is the enforcement. That is the enforcement. There's nothing to argue here.
The entire point of what I was saying is that force doesn't have to be physical. Exerting your will does not have to be physical. Women do it through manipulation. The devil does it through manipulation.
Yes.
Right. So it's almost like you are. It's almost like I'm taking the Christian worldview and you're not. It's almost like you're the Nietzsche.
But if the devil, assuming for a second that you imply or apply this manipulation, and the person says, "No, I'm not going to be manipulated," men have recourse. Women don't. That's the distinction.
Okay. Hold on. You're assuming that people who get manipulated know that they're getting manipulated. How often is that
literally baked into my hypothetical? Assuming for a second that you cannot
false.
Assuming for a second that women can't manipulate men. They can't manipulate whatever this group is, which has also happened many times, by the way. They can't do it. They can't manipulate them. They can't coerce them. Can they do anything? Can they do anything, and can men do something? Just answer this.
Hold on.
Answer
the
question.
That being manipulated is a choice? Hold on. Do you think being manipulated is a choice? It's like, I think this woman's manipulating me. I'm going to choose to be manipulated.
No,
you really think that's
ridiculous. What I'm saying is
but you just said that that's the case.
Yes, you can apply manipulative tactics, and they don't work, Kevin.
The entire point of seduction.
Again, you can apply manipulative tactics, and they don't work. Right.
Okay. What I am arguing is that they do work.
So women in the Middle East,
throughout history.
So women in Iran are not being able to be very coercive towards the men, Kevin.
Well, I guess they're not very good at manipulating.
I guess not. But the thing is that if
women in the West,
again, if they're trying to do this coercion and it doesn't work, they have no recourse. They have no recourse because the men won't give them any. So they're still appealing to something greater to them over and over and over again, whether it's through manipulation or whatever. They're still appealing to somebody who has greater singular autonomy and authority than they do to enforce their rights.
Physical strength is required.
It's not just physical strength,
which I agree with.
I don't think it's just that. I also think there's a mentality difference. I think that men have less problem killing people, all sorts of different things like this that go into that as well. But the whole point
I agree with
is,
that. Yeah.
how many times do I have to say this? They can't, even if they're being manipulated, they have no recourse outside of that, and men do. So they're always appealing to men.
It doesn't matter if they don't have any recourse outside of it.
That
is
matter.
The most effective. That is the most effective method to influence people, is through manipulation and being able to psychologically manipulate people to do what you want. That is how Christianity took over the Roman Empire. That is how the devil has so much influence over everybody, even though he doesn't like, it's not like the devil comes up and just starts beating the shit out of people. No, he influences and seduces them through basically psychological and spiritual means.
So
you're proving my point.
So ultimately, how Christianity is influenced is that men who convert over to Christianity become the enforcement arm for the Christianity. So assume for a second that you had a person, and this did happen oftentimes in pagan tribes, where tribe leaders would convert to Christianity and their soldiers would not. And so they removed that tribal leader because now the enforcers are gone. He had no power left. This happened with pagans all the time. It was a big problem inside of these pagan nations. In fact, it was a problem in Japan with the daimyos. The daimyos also would convert over to Christianity, and their samurai said, no, we want to stick with Buddhism. That was a big problem for them as well. So if you don't have the enforcement arm that's there that you can appeal to, which is going to be men, to protect whatever the rights are that you think everybody should adhere to, you're fucked, Kevin. You're fucked. There's nothing there, and women never have that recourse external to men. Neither do men. All rights fundamentally come down to men.
Okay, yes.
Then there's nothing else to argue.
They come down to whoever is at the top of the hierarchy, who is able to influence the people that do the enforcing, which almost always are men. And I agree, it's not just physical, it's intellectual too, not necessarily from, I guess maybe technically an IQ standpoint, but more so from the standpoint of like creating machines of war, for example, right? So, but would you agree at the very least that women on average are much more socially aware than the average man?
I think that when you're talking about Western dynamics, that might be true. But I think that the way that other cultures deal inside of these dynamics historically has been different. I don't think that always kind of the social awareness, if that's what you're talking about, has been as skewed as it is now. But I would say probably. They probably are a bit more socially aware. You're talking about when it comes to the dynamics between people. That's what I think you're talking about. Yeah, I think so. I think that's a necessary function. They actually necessarily have to be that way. Yeah.
Exactly, or else they wouldn't be able to exert their will and their power and their influence, that's the way in which they do it.
I agree with that too.
Yeah. So
and I've never disagreed with that.
I think the debate's over then. I think we're done.
Yeah, but I just want to let you know that you never actually answered to the paradox at all.
You could say that all day. Just rewind the tape and go ahead and look at it.
I mean, you could say rewind. You could say rewind the tape all day too, but you never actually answered to it.
Address it one more time.
I answered it so many times.
Well, no, you didn't. You just
okay. So fundamentally, I'll answer it one last time, and I'm still available for about another hour. So if anybody wants to come on and we can both talk.
Yeah, we're gonna do an open panel after this. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I'll just have my closing statement, I guess. Men and women, I agree with Andrew fundamentally that a right is not something that's like real. It is a social construction that we make in society in order to, if we're assume that we're rational creatures, which is assuming a lot, but let's just say that we are. We use that in a way in which to ensure our future wills are able to proliferate in the future. But I will say that the way in which men and women exert their will and their will to power and what they truly want are different. Men are the physically superior sex. We are bigger, stronger, faster. You could even argue in the extremes, we're more intelligent in terms of creating things that will help with the enforcement. However, but women know this. Unconsciously, they know this. And my theory is that they have evolved over time to be whoever's the most socially aware and socially adept are the ones who kept living on. And the way in which women express their will to power is through manipulative tactics. They can manipulate men into doing what they want. The way in which they do that is naturally their hypergamous nature. They go for the top of the hierarchy, and then at that point, they're able to influence the people who have the influence of those enforcement arms, such as like an army of men, or maybe in the future, nuclear warheads or whatever, doesn't matter. The enforcement arm can always change technically with technology. And that's the way in which men and women, you could argue, are equal in the sense of, okay, well, it's an equal playing field in terms of how they express their will to power. They just express it differently. With women, it's much more subtle. And, you know, some people might be thinking, oh, we're just arguing semantics or whatever here. I think it's much deeper than that, because it's very important for us to understand the relationship dynamics between women and men, because that's the entire reason that something like the manosphere exists in the first place. People don't understand women at all, right? And it's important. If we want to make sure that societies and stuff in the future work out, we need to understand that you can't just do it through like physical force and stuff. Influencing the people at the top is what's important. So, yeah.
All right, Andrew, do you want to give your closing statement?
Yeah, so this has been hilarious for me. Essentially, what I've said, did I cut in on your closing at all? No.
Sorry.
No.
Still
of course
Cope.
not. Of course not. But anyway, it's kind of a typified low tier Reddit tier debate style where someone will come in and they won't actually address what the argument is. I don't even think that Kevin really understood my positions about egalitarianism or equality between men and women. I don't even think he understood that. I think that he thought I was making some broader point about rights, which is somewhat irrelevant, actually, to the point that I'm trying to make with egalitarianism. It's very simple. It's like Kevin's position, simply put, is this. He says the influence is the power, not the power itself. The contentions point to this. And by the way, Nietzsche was incorrect about this. Many philosophers have beat him over the head, and I'll be one to do it today. Kind of the giant paradox to this is that what happens when somebody says you have influence, but we no longer adhere to the influence? Women can't do that. Men can do that. So ultimately, the power dynamic always rests with men to be the enforcers of the rights of both men and women. Therefore, all of your rights must come from them. This question itself was something that plagued Nietzsche. It's a question that had plagued philosophers forever and ever and ever. There was not a single point that Kevin made, not one, that was a defeater to this. So Kevin says, well, you conceded on this point. Yeah. You conceded on that point. Yeah. But these were all irrelevant and erroneous. They didn't actually address the core argument here, which isn't even an argument, actually. It's actually just a descriptor of reality. It's just a reality descriptor. So I'm looking for an argument against that particular reality descriptor when it comes to egalitarianism, and just saying influence is power. That's actually a very poor way to look at it. Influence can operate as a lever for power. That's true. But only one sex can say, no, regardless of influence, we can do something outside of that to stop you. Only one sex can do that. And that would be men. And so the enforcement arm always is going to go back to men. So Kevin might say cope, but just try to recognize he never actually made a good, cohesive, or coherent argument against what I'm saying.
I'm not going to make a rebuttal just for the sake of time, but because we'll just keep going back for it. I do want to point out, though, that the definition of power, which I said earlier, and you can look this up, is the capacity or ability to direct or influence, right? And you're basically saying that power is an influence, but it's baked within the definition of itself. That's all I want to say. Any rebuttal that I have to what he just said, I basically
let me give you my rebuttal to your rebuttal, since you gave me a rebuttal after my closing statement, which is that even if in the definiendum it says that influence is a position of power, I still don't disagree. I'm just saying that if your influence doesn't work, there's a mechanism men have, women don't, which is what creates the rights paradox to begin with. Very simple. It's not complex. I think basically everybody understands it, including you. But you want to kind of go into this grandiose ideology in order to defeat a basic descriptor. It's a basic descriptor of reality. I don't even know how people can argue against it, to be honest, because you didn't argue against it at all. You just talked about hierarchical structures, which I don't even disagree with any of that. This just wasn't even an argument to be had.
Look, if anybody wants, because you brought up Nietzsche, and Nietzsche's, it is a problem that kind of concerned him, but he basically came up with, I want to say a solution, but a descriptor actually of what actually happened, and that's within the genealogy of morals, that he wrote, and more specifically, the priest figure. This is just going to be for some of the philosophy nerds out there that want to do a little bit deeper reading on this, so that you understand my position. But yeah.
Okay, let me start opening up the open panel. We got Rachel, Andrew's wife, backstage. She wanted to come on. We got a few other people backstage. Overall, I thought it was a good debate. I think it was some good back and forth. So yeah, I appreciate both of you guys engaging. All right.
By the way, guys, I want to say it got fiery and stuff there, but I do like Andrew a lot as a person. I hope maybe he does. I mean, wait, actually, I'm pretty sure Andrew. I introduced you to Alex, right? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So
I don't.
It's like,
just so you understand, I don't take anything personally.
I know.
Ever.
I know you don't. I just want to make sure that you own it, because sometimes things when you
win
and stuff,
when you win every debate you walk into, it's really hard to take things personally anyway, Kevin.
There's two Andrews.
I know where you're coming from, man. At least for me, I think I'm undefeated so far in debates. I guess you do too, but you know what I do appreciate though? I do think that we do use rhetorical techniques here and there, but I do think that it genuinely was, in my opinion at least, a clash of ideas and not just like a debate about doing like rhetorical kung fu. I mean, maybe you think differently, but I thought
I don't even feel like we contended with what my idea is at all, to be honest with you. Like, I really don't. I'm trying to be maximum charitable. I feel like we were arguing about everything except the point, but fair enough.
Let me move it forward. I was just going to say, I think there's two Andrews. One is the debate Andrew, which is quite hostile and aggressive. But there's actually another Andrew who's super duper nice, who's a really good dude, who's someone that I like and respect. So
it's kind of like sports, right? Like
Well, yeah, it's blood sports.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I appreciate what you did this with Duke's debate, where you were like, oh, well, I prepare for debates. A lot of people don't prepare for debates because they don't take it seriously. But you and I do take these concepts seriously. So, yeah, I mean, I watch
all conversations for the most part. If you have somebody who's being a good faith interlocutor, which I think you were being, I just think that you kind of missed the point. I think that they're all worth having. And by the way, just like everybody in the audience understands, it's not actually possible to lose a debate anyway. People think this in the blood sports, scheme. I know that the kind of like the audience wants blood, but I've lost debates before. Not that many, but I have lost them, and I've lost them in Discord many times, especially when I'm trying to attack ideas that I don't really understand, and we're kind of doing a back and forth just so I can like get my head around an idea. You can't really lose. All you can really do is learn. That's it.
Yeah. That's a great perspective. And also, I've been away from YouTube for a while. The reason that I came back actually is because I'm writing a book exactly on masculinity and femininity. So I wanted to actually bounce some of these ideas and concepts to somebody I respect intellectually. So it was good. I agree. It was a good learning experience.
Cool. So let me move forward. Let me bring on Rachel. This is a question that kept popping up by this guy, Andrew. So if you don't mind answering that real quick, and then we'll hear from Rachel.
Women with blacks and see how he reacts to that. Yeah. So just to answer that, I've actually answered that in debates before. That men are, of course, the ones who give rights to men, and men are the ones who take rights away from men. So you can interject whatever racial demographics that you want that become political issues, and you're going to end up with the exact same thing over and over and over again. You could assume that the same thing could logically happen in reverse. Let's assume that these were interchanged the opposite direction. Of course that could happen, and it has happened. You know what I mean? There was an entire Muslim slave trade that was specifically tailored just to whites, and eventually whites did something about that, or what you'd say, Western Europeans did something about that. But yeah, men always give men rights and take men's rights away. So regardless of race, that doesn't even really play the part in the category. You could kind of insert race with anything that you wanted to. It wouldn't really matter what you inserted it with; it would be the same thing.
Okay, so let's hear from Rachel.
Hello, Kevin. Very nice to meet you.
Likewise.
I'm glad to hear your book.
Yeah, you're Andrew's wife, right? Just so I know.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Right on.
I'm glad to hear you're writing a book. I also wrote a book on the history of feminism and kind of where the ideology comes from. It's kind of my jam. So I wanted to ask if you were aware that there was actually far more a higher membership in anti-suffrage group among women than pro-suffrage groups among women. And you may not have heard the famous quote. Well, it's not famous because it's been suppressed by women's studies departments, but Elizabeth Cady Stanton said that if it were up to women, the 19th Amendment would have never passed. It was only because of men that it passed. So I didn't know if you were aware that actually the vast majority of women were against women's suffrage.
No, I didn't know that. And, I don't know. Let me ask you, do you think that I'm a feminist?
No, I don't think you are. I know a little bit about your content.
Okay. Got
No.
it. Yeah,
No,
I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, it's not people's fault that they don't know these things because this history has been intentionally suppressed. But when you guys were speaking earlier about when you asked Andrew, why would they pass it then? How did that happen? How did the 19th Amendment get passed? And Andrew was correct that it was in part due to the income tax, and that's because the same group of men who met in secret at Jekyll Island to pass the income tax in 1913 were the same group of men who helped fund the suffrage movement. So,
correct.
These were liberal, industrialist, wealthy millionaires and billionaires of the time, and they wanted cheap labor, and they wanted to double the income tax, and they wanted a whole new voting bloc that they knew could be very easily propagandized. So it really was men behind suffrage.
Sure, that might be true, but it's not like they already sort of appealed to women that were already there. Like Elizabeth Cady Stanton probably believed what she believed before these guys did that, right? It's just more so it was like a union of these two things that were already there.
Well, most women were against suffrage. They took a mass indoctrination in order to push women towards suffrage at all.
Yeah,
sure, but again, we're my whole argument isn't that it's just going to be like women as a collective. It's more so, and women or men. When it comes to power, it's just the influence of a few different people. So even if it's just Elizabeth Cady Stanton on her own or whatever other feminist, if they have a lot of influence over men, even though there's only a few of them, that's kind of the whole point.
All that will to power is always based around the consent of the collective. Because the collective says you don't have power, you don't have it.
I mean, yes and no. It's more so, again, from a Nietzschean standpoint, it's more so about, especially, again, I'm going to use the genealogy of morals here, but basically he talked about there being a priest figure. Obviously, Nietzsche's pretty anti-Christianity. Don't let Jordan Peterson fool you. But basically he said that these higher men, especially the priest, would manipulate the herd into getting what they want because he believed that the herd themselves didn't have, herd being, common people. Nietzsche was very elitist. I don't know if you can tell, but I do think there's some truth in what he's saying. He believed that the common people didn't have the ability to actually will themselves to power as a collective. They actually needed somebody to command them, and that had to be somebody from the higher elite class. That's what he believed. And I think that with this, I understand what you're saying, Rachel, but I do believe that regardless of that, if Elizabeth Cady Stanton or whatever other higher influencing or very smart and shrewd women were at the top, no matter how few of them they were, if they played the power game correctly, then things happen the way they happen because of that.
Right. I think I can cut through some of the philosophical. I love philosophy. Don't get me wrong. I'm a philosophy nerd, but we've had 100 years of women's lib, and women are still not the ones that keep the power grid up or build the nuclear reactors or know how to write the nuclear codes or any of that stuff, right? So any mechanism you might appeal to that women can use, even influence, even manipulation, those things all require the consent of men. And if at any point, for any reason, the men revoke that consent, the women have no power. Would you say that's correct?
They have no recourse.
I mean, their recourse would be to appeal to other men. It's sort of like, okay,
yes.
I literally said this earlier in the debate. I repeated it multiple
times.
Then
then there's no argument.
Yes, we do. The entire point is the power structure. So let's take Elon Musk, for example, right? Let's say all of his workers went on strike. Well, technically, Elon Musk is only in power because his workers do the work. However, if his workers all quit, he could just be like, all right, that's fine. I'll just hire cheaper labor. So still technically exactly. The entire structure doesn't fall apart. You just need to appeal to a different set. I never denied I never deny that the enforcement arm
Then there's nothing to argue.
needs to be men. I've said that the entire debate.
Then there's nothing to argue. Then the paradox exists, whether you like it or not.
We're repeating this like this is like the 6th time. Okay,
Andrew,
I'm going to say it one more time. Okay, go ahead, Alec. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, maybe I can bridge the gap once again. So the crux of disagreement, like I said, Kevin agrees with you. I believe that the egalitarian society is not truly possible. He believes
that's it. Then that's it.
Women,
then that's it. There's nothing else to argue.
No. Hold on, Alex. I do believe. Hold on. I do believe that it is possible. It's just through different means. Again, women do it through their influence and manipulation of men.
It's not possible because they'll never have the ultimate recourse.
Wait, let me just finish my statement. So I think the crux from what I heard from Kevin was the fact that he's like, hey, listen, actually, I don't think it's the people who are enforcing the rights, right, in the enforcement arts who have the majority of the power. They have some of the power, but I believe the people who hold most of the power are the people at the top, and that can be women. And therefore, because of that, your whole argument that women's rights come from men doesn't necessarily have to be true in a lot of situations. Did I sum it up pretty well, Kevin?
Yes, you did. The problem is with the ultimate. The problem is with the ultimate recourse, though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's why it's paradoxical.
Question. So I don't know if you guys know, but in Bolshevik Russia in 1918, they made abortion not only legal but paid for by the state. The Bolsheviks were very left-wing socialist, very social justice-y, right? And then when Stalin came to power 10 years later, at that point, the Soviet Union had 3 abortions for every 1 live birth. And Stalin knew this was a death sentence for the USSR. They were going to be overtaken by their enemies. So he took that right away. He made abortion illegal so that they could raise the birth rate and hopefully survive. Wouldn't you say that's a historical example of women being given a right and then a strong man taking it away?
Yeah, because he's at the top of the hierarchy. It'd be a different argument. I mean, it would support that supports my argument. My entire argument is that people at the top of the hierarchy make decisions that influence the collective, both men and women. It would be different
glad
if you
said that, Kevin. I'm glad you said that because
Rachel, no offense, but I've been saying that the whole entire time. That's been my point from the beginning of the debate.
Listen, if Angela Merkel, who is now the Chancellor of Germany, if any man were to come and just shove her out of the way, just push her off the podium, just shove her fat ass off the podium, she can't do shit about it, right? Unless other men are willing to step in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Which she commands, right? That's the entire point that I'm saying. I mean, you could easily supplant... Hold on. You could easily supplant Angela Merkel with... let's say Napoleon again. Historically, he's not actually.
Wait, guys, she's not the Chancellor of Germany right now. It's some Olaf dude.
Oh, is it?
It doesn't matter. I mean, the whole...
Just want to clarify.
It doesn't matter. My entire point is okay, well...
Alex, fact check.
Yeah. No.
Fact checking.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, you could easily replace Angela Merkel with, I don't know, let's do France and let's do... what's the little...
Yeah, but the ultimate recourse, what she's saying is that the ultimate recourse, even if they command all of these different men, a man who's on that podium has instant recourse he can do himself. Women can't do that. And collectively, they can't do that.
It depends on who's doing the pushing.
Yeah,
it depends on who's up there.
If it's like Biden, what is he going to do?
Yeah, exactly. If it's Joe Biden and freaking AOC, I'm pretty sure AOC.
Joe Biden would. I'm pretty confident that Joe Biden would have a better shot than Hillary Clinton, right?
Well, let's try it this way, guys.
I don't know.
We haven't talked about this on a different level, which is, let's say that Andrew and I get into a domestic dispute, and he is doing something bad to me. He's roughing me up. He's shoving me around. What recourse do I have in that instance to stop that?
To call the police.
I don't know. Call the police. Yeah.
Call the police. And who's going to show up?
Well, it's probably going to be a majority.
Generally men.
But it could be women that show up.
Okay.
It'll probably be men. I mean, let's be honest. It's like you need to bring in the men. I'm not arguing against that.
But if 2 women show up with guns and batons and police training, they would, no offense to Andrew, destroy him.
No.
If he wants to escalate.
I mean, unless Andrew also has a gun.
He does. We have many.
Yeah. So,
but
the police always has higher firepower.
So this is
they don't always have
firepower. You guys don't think about this. So I'm a firearms instructor myself. I teach women to shoot. And in Alex's chat, there's all these men going, but women have guns and women can use the guns. It's like, No, women, first of all, the guns are built by men. They're designed by men. The bullets are manufactured by men. Most women can't load a magazine manually on their own with no help. Most women don't have the grip strength to operate a semi-automatic pistol, and most of them require multiple lessons to get over the loud noise. So if you guys are under this illusion that somehow guns are going to enable women to take over, that's just wrong.
We agree with you on this point, Rachel, but none of that applies to female police officers. They clearly can shoot a gun.
It does.
Yeah, well, it does because they're hang on. Female police officers are far more likely to be overpowered by suspect than male police officers, and it happens way more consistently. By the way, in that way, in fact, there's certain beats females aren't even allowed to take because the chances that they'll get overpowered are extremely high. So, like, there's no arguing this. What Kevin's overarching point is, he's like, what he's saying is true. It just, again, doesn't really answer to the paradox. So he's saying, he's like, you can influence power as a woman, and through that influence, you can direct men to do X, Y, Z. So the woman holds the power. It's like, that's true, but
to a point.
If the men say collectively no, then they're fucked. Then they're fucked. Women have no recourse to go to other women to do anything about that.
Right.
They can only appeal to the men. And so ultimately men are the ones who hold the power and dominance in society and always will.
And one more time, just one more time, my simple sort of rebuttal to, I guess I just want to repeat it again, is that, basically just doesn't like really matter. It's like, okay, whoever's at the top of the hierarchy, that's what matters at the end of the day.
Let me ask you this. Hang on. I got one question, just one. Hang on. I just want to ask you this. Do you think that we will ever have an egalitarian society, Kevin? True egalitarianism between men and women?
No. I want to give you a really technical answer, but it's truly what I believe. There's never going to, like power is like a scale, right? There's never going to be true equilibrium. So it's possible it could tip to the feminine side a little bit more than the masculine side. In my opinion, that's actually what this is actually a common red pill belief, and I actually agree with this, that it actually is tipped way more toward the feminine right now than the masculine, right? So I think women have, more rights and freedoms now in general than men do in the West. But it could easily tip back one day. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that influence is not something we can just dismiss and throw out. You're right about that. But influence still requires consent, right? The men still have to, on some level, consent. Yeah, because even if you're being influenced, you can at any moment go, wait a minute, this person is manipulating me. This person is unduly influencing me. And if the person realizes that, they can turn it around.
Yes, but this is where we disagree. Most people who get seduced have no idea that they got seduced until it's already too late. And that's
it never lasts forever.
Sure, but I mean, you look at the manosphere itself. What do you think the manosphere is? It's a bunch of guys who got manipulated and deceived by women because women's power is within this domain. A lot of times, at least among common men, most men, that is something that women are better at than men. I think that's probably where the big disagreement is that I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, I'm not trying to strawman you, but it seems like you have, you seem to think that being influenced is more of a choice, and I think it's less of a choice. And I think that's sort of
in fact, I would agree that, like, with advertisers, especially in the 20th century, that you're being influenced all the time subconsciously, and you don't even know that you're being influenced subconsciously. So no, that wouldn't be a choice. None of that, though, contends with the paradox, which is my point over and over and over again, which is that
it does.
If you look at this paradigm and you try to just understand it from the standpoint of egalitarianism, can men and women ever truly be equal? The answer definitively must be no.
Okay. So wait, this is really important. I'm glad we got to this point, because I think it does answer the paradox, because you say, okay, well, if men collectively say, oh, women don't have rights anymore, then they don't have rights, right?
That's right.
That presupposes the idea that they understand that they're being manipulated and used by people at the top. So I'm saying that in most situations, they don't understand that that's happening. For all we know, they could all be being influenced by a woman. They don't even know it. Or a woman influencing a man.
So the problem is the critique is the same on your end. It presupposes that they wouldn't know that, when clearly they have known this historically, or at least have thought they have, and have done all sorts of revolutions which prove the point. So,
No,
so,
hold
so
on,
here's
there
the
are
thing. So hang on.
times-
Let me finish. I'll just
Okay,
let you make your
go ahead.
point.
Go ahead.
Okay. So if that's true, right, you're using a presupposition as well. I would say that mine is more true because still what I have that you don't, and this is again just a descriptor of reality, is that the appealment's always going to be to men. So necessarily men as the enforcers of the rights always are going to necessarily be the higher appeal for women. If they're necessarily the higher appeal for women as the nuclear option, then you can't ever really have true egalitarianism. It can't be possible unless you have I don't know, some bizarre metric where you think that forevermore men could be influenced against their will or never catch on or something like that, which is just fucking stupid to be honest. On its face.
I think throughout history it's happened both ways. Where I think the vast majority of times the
Guys,
the herd, to put it in Nietzschean terms. One
wanna-
second. Sorry. Just last point.
Okay.
To put it in Nietzschean terms, the herd doesn't know they're being manipulated. Sometimes they do, and then that's when uprisings happen, right? Like the Bolshevik Revolution, the French Revolution, that type of stuff. But I do think that the majority of times they don't understand that they're being manipulated, and the person doing the manipulated, it doesn't preclude women at all. In fact, a lot of times it's the woman manipulating the man at the top who then influences.
Yeah, it can be, but again, the paradox is still there for the
guys. I want to keep it moving. We have about 1 million people backstage. Unfortunately, Rachel dropped out because I actually had a question for both of you. Maybe Andrew could just really quickly answer this before we move on to Brad. Do you think in this hypothetical situation where Andrew is a bad boy and he abuses Rachel, if a SWAT team of female officers shows up, that Andrew has any kind of chance against them because he's man?
Probably not.
Okay. All right, there we go. Let's kick it off to you, Brad.
Hey, what's up, guys?
But I would have a better chance against them than if they were all men. So anyway,
I mean, hey, I agree with that. That's true. If you've ever been shooting with a woman, you'll.
I'd have a better chance. That's all I'm saying.
Well, if you ever go shooting with a woman and a man, and they're both first-time beginners, the man picks it up way quicker than the woman does, typically. Yeah. Okay, so Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, I only caught bits and pieces of the debate, but but Kevin, it's good to see you again, man. I was actually missing you on these streams.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I had a surprising amount of people email me saying where'd you go? So it's nice to feel missed, I guess. But yeah, I'll be posting on YouTube again soon, just less often, more like video essays and that type of stuff. And I'm always down to do debates and stuff like this. I love doing this stuff. So.
Yeah, I warmed up to you a lot. I like you, man. You're always very kind and respectful and good faith, so I respect that. And two videos you made that I really like is the red pill they sold you is a lie. I liked how you talked about that, about how your environment, your government, your system, affects your life a lot. Mm-hmm. And the other one where you showed how a boy would grow up differently if he was with a single mom versus a single dad that have different mentalities. I really like those ones. So.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I just wanted to bring up a point. I heard something mentioned in the debate about Christianity spreading by force. I won't deny Christianity spread by force, but what people never really talk about is every major philosophy or religion has spread by force, but they like to single out Christianity.
My at least the position I took is that it's not spread by force. I mean, it's spread by force in a different way, not physical force. It's spread through influence of the mind, influence of the spirit, for better or for worse. I think a Christian worldview would say, oh, well, because God is the truth, God is the logos, it appeals to the fundamental part of us that's naturally going to react positively to the word of God. Therefore, they followed it. For me, I don't really know if I believe in that. I think more so it appeals to certain archetypes in our mind that are very attractive and very seductive, and therefore people follow it. Because, say what you want about the Christian Bible, it's very deep philosophically and psychologically. And I think it puts things in a story format that's easy for people to understand these concepts, which they sort of inherently know to be true. Does that necessarily mean that God is, the Christian God is real? I wouldn't make that leap, but that's a whole different thing. Yeah.
So the distinction there, Brad, is that I think me and Kevin kind of largely agree that Christianity wasn't spread through the sword, though there was instances where it was, kind of to your point. The distinction that him and I would have is that he believes that simply giving the power and influence at the top, converting them to Christianity, was enough. And then that necessarily creates a tendril effect, and that's not true. My position instead is the differential is that the enforcement, enforcing Christian morality, that's what is necessary for the Christian ethics and morals to actually succeed, and that's what we've seen historically. So it always comes down to force and power of enforcement. And this is kind of a fundamental baseline for existence itself, is that everything comes down to who the fuck can enforce it. At least as kind of an ultimate. Now, Christianity, of course, preaches restraint against that, and we don't consider that to be moral. But whether it's moral or not, it seems to be that there is a truth to the fact that whether you're a moral or immoral person, you can be forced, regardless of that, to whatever the aims and machinations of others are, as long as they have control of the arm of men.
Yeah, I believe it was spread both ways by the sword to an extent. Mm-hmm. But I was not saying that in any kind of anti-Christian way. I was simply making the point that people love to single out Christianity, act as if Christianity was spread by the sword, but every other major philosophy or religion was spread just by, billboards and pamphlets and things like this. And it's ridiculous. And I can actually tell you...
sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I can actually tell you in Scandinavia... A lot of people think of Scandinavia as this like progressive paradise, and it's so tolerant and it's so blah, 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 blah. But there's actually a lot of Muslim refugees from countries like Syria that go to Scandinavia. And this doesn't get talked about very much, but in progressive Scandinavia, homeschooling your children is illegal. You have to put them into the public school, which I believe is a mind control method. But you have to put them in the public school. So when these little Muslim kids go to the public school and they disagree with some of the things that are being taught because it goes against Islam, some of the ideologies that are being taught, the Scandinavian social services actually show up to the house and take the children away. Because if the Muslim parents teach their Muslim children that patriarchy is good, they consider that child abuse. If they teach them that the man should be the leader in the relationship, should run the household, they consider that child abuse. So here you have a lot of people think of Scandinavia as so peaceful and tolerant, and we should be more like Scandinavia, but they are literally breaking up families and stealing children from parents over differences in beliefs and ideology.
Yeah, just to quickly clarify, so not all Scandinavian countries are the same. Finland, which is the country I visited, only 1% of their population is migrants, and that includes all migrants. So some of the Scandinavian countries are pretty picky about who they accept. But yeah, Sweden, there's a lot of Muslims there.
Yeah, that's a fair point. This is Sweden specifically. I should have been more specific.
You're good.
Yeah. And then something, I guess, a little more relevant to the debate. I believe every woman would be happier under a patriarchy. But I've noticed the women who are like most against the patriarchy, they've usually been abused by a man, or they've been very hurt by a man. And it's very sad, but it doesn't make their position any more correct.
I don't have a stance either way. That might be a surprise to most of you. I'm trying to, and I think Andrew would agree to this. The debate we were kind of having was more so like about descriptions rather than prescriptions of what ought to be, right? So we were kind of arguing a bit more about like what is the fundamental nature of.
Yeah, we're just talking about what is, not what ought be. Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't really have. I honestly don't know if a patriarchy would be better or worse. I haven't thought about it.
But I mean, it would be better though, right? Because I mean, the patriarchal system's always going to be in existence. There's not much choice there.
Yeah, I just noticed.
My position on this has always been like, I want equal opportunity, but I don't care about equal outcomes, right? And that's why I think feminism overreaches. So, and equal opportunities exist in America largely. So, I has the same chance of getting a job as a man. A woman has the same chance of getting college. Sometimes, actually, she might have an advantage, right? But yeah, equal outcomes is like just, I think, way too insane. As long as women are able to do what they want to do, I just believe in freedom.
But egalitarianism really isn't the push necessarily for an equal outcome.
But
It's
I'm not
it's
an egalitarian, though. That's the thing.
yeah, right. But I'm just saying that's what me and Kevin are kind of squabbling over. We're squabbling over this kind of micro. In truth, it's a micro. Like, so to give you an understanding, I think we probably agree like 99.7% of probably every descriptor on planet Earth. Okay, there's probably not that
I'd say
many descriptors.
probably like 80%.
Okay, well, there's probably not that many descriptors. Whatever it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We probably agree a lot more than we disagree on descriptors for how the planet operates. But what we're really arguing here is kind of this fundamental idea as to whether or not egalitarianism itself operates within a paradox. And so his kind of grounding argument for this is like, no, power comes from the top down, and it doesn't matter who's at the top. Their influence necessarily is going to have and achieve control of whatever this enforcement arm is. But kind of the counter to this, which he has an answer to, is the recourse of outcome, which is like, what if the enforcement arm says no? Then your power was only an illusion, and only men can be the enforcement of that, and women cannot be. So only one can break the illusion. The other one just has to kind of take it. And so all I'm saying is that when it comes to egalitarianism, meaning complete equality between men and women, that it's an illusion. It can't actually be done.
I want to ask Andrew just a really quick question. Are you familiar with Game of Thrones at all? Is this something you follow at all, or not really?
Dude, it's so funny. I was gonna bring up Game of Thrones as part of my argument.
I've seen a couple of seasons of it. Yeah.
Okay, there's like a famous riddle in Game of Thrones, right? And basically it goes like this: there is a king, there is a priest, and there's a really rich guy, all standing in the room. And then there's also a swordsman right to the side. He's the one that has a sword. They all say, kill the other person. Who's the one that has the power? Who's the one that's going to die? And the ultimate solution to that, well, power is basically a shadow on the wall. It's an illusion, right? It just depends on who the swordman thinks is in charge, right? So it's basically a mind trick.
But in this case, the swordsman is a man.
Okay.
Sure. It could be a woman.
It could be a swordswoman. Look, it could be a swordswoman with the rest of them being unarmed.
But the reason it's equated as swordsman is because he's going to be the enforcer of the power, right? That's the whole point.
Andrew, we agree on that, though. We agree on that.
Right, but I mean, we don't if you can't kind of walk it through to its conclusion, right? You got to walk it all the way to its conclusion, which can't just be based around...
Andrew, if it's Queen Cersei and the swordsman thinks she has the power, then she's the one that's actually pushing the buttons. It's not fucking Gregor Clegane that has the power in Game of Thrones. It's Queen Cersei, right? Because that's who everyone believes is in charge. So Queen Cersei and Daenerys are the the strongest, most powerful characters in Game of Thrones. It's not the physically strong.
Okay. So here's let me try it this way. Let's go into Game of Thrones and Queen Cersei, or whatever the fuck this chick's name is.
Cersei, say it right.
Assume that all the women in the kingdom decide that she shouldn't be the queen anymore, and the men say, "No, we still recognize her as the queen." Do you think she's still going to be the queen, or do you think that the women are going to be able to overthrow her, Alex?
No, generally not.
Generally not. Right. That's the paradox, the true paradox of power. That's the whole point.
I do think that they would be able to, from the standpoint. I just think these.
You think they'd be able to if they influenced enough men?
Exactly.
That's what you're saying, which is not a point of disagreement.
Exactly. I never but I think you're discounting. I think you're discounting. Hold on. I think you're discounting how much power there actually is there, the amount, because that's a very big thing, right?
There's as much power as men allow them to have. That's how much there is. It's a necessary entailment. It's a necessary entailment.
Allow them to have, but they might not even be aware that they're giving them. They might think, "Oh, I'm being nice to my woman," or whatever. But like, we know how women are. Women
they're still allowing them to have it, even if they don't understand the machinations. They're still allowing it. So the thing is, it's always as much as men will allow women to have power. That's it.
Allowing it insofar as being manipulated. So it's like, oh, well, if I manipulate somebody and brainwash and gaslight them, then and then they start giving me permission to do stuff because of that. It's like, sure, so actually I'm the one in power, not them.
Right. So, but you allowed them to have the power.
that society in Game of Thrones is like super misogynistic and patriarchal. None of them want Queen Cersei to have power. None of the High Lords feel comfortable with that. There's a lot of like, I don't know if you've read the books, but
did she keep power?
She's a woman.
Did she keep power?
She's able to keep power, but not because the men want her to stay in power.
Did she keep it? Did she keep it ultimately?
Until the end of season.
Yeah, and did a man end up getting the power?
A woman took it from her.
Yeah, who ended up being like the king at the end of Game of Thrones, the king of the world or whatever?
A crippled dude.
Yeah, it was a crippled dude. Who actually has very little physical power because he's a cripple.
Yeah, exactly. But the crippled dude has influence because he can psychologically look into people's minds.
That ending was bullshit anyway. So
yeah. Well, hold on. I mean, look, this is again. I guess Andrew doesn't disagree with this. I don't know, but what I was going to bring up initially, actually, with Game of Thrones is and granted, I've only watched the show. I haven't read the books. So I'm not a true fan. I apologize. But the Starks versus the Lannisters, right? Robb Stark, more specifically. Robb Stark, I'm pretty sure, Alice, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he won every single battle, right?
Yeah.
And yet he still lost to the Lannisters because the Lannisters they're known for being very clever. So it's almost like Game of Thrones itself is all about power, right? And so that one of the things that's displayed within that is that, okay, we have this idea that power is whoever's the most powerful army. When in the matter of fact, the least powerful army lost because the Lannisters were able to manipulate a situation where they allied themselves with the Freys. They invited the higher-ups of the Starks to the Red Wedding, and then they killed all of them.
Kevin,
right?
Well, Lannisters are not the least powerful army, but I see your point.
Yeah, but they lost every time to the Starks. Right. But they still ended up winning the war, even though they lost every battle.
Who gives a shit?
Like, no, but this is it kind of proves my point that it's like
on my channel.
This fictional movie kind of fictional show proves your point, does it, Kevin?
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's inspired by true events. First of all, it's inspired by the War of the Roses.
It is.
Yeah. It's inspired by the War of the Roses.
If you want to insult me, if you want to insult my epics, that's fine. But don't you ever insult Game of Thrones on my channel.
Game of Thrones blows.
This is the last collab we're gonna do.
I mean, a TV show the last like 2 seasons. You're correct in that, but as a overall.
Anyway, let's bring it back. My bad.
Exactly. Hey, you know what? Child's Play was based on a true story too. So just letting you know, Kevin. Child's Play was also based on it. I'm serious. So was Annabelle. Annabelle was based on a true story.
I know Annabelle, but
yes, I have to bring it back. We have a lot of guests to get through, and I want to
20
minutes. Brad, do you have any other last points you want to make before we move on?
My last point would just be, like I said, I've noticed a trend where usually if a woman has had all good experiences with men or mostly good experiences and she loves her father and close to her father and she hasn't been abused and she's had that romance and affection, usually she doesn't really have any issue with like being submissive or the patriarchy or anything like that. Usually if a woman's been very abused or had bad experiences, usually she goes hardcore into the feminism and usually is not very happy. So that's sad. But yeah, that's what it is. So anyway, good debate, guys, and have a good night.
Thanks for coming on.
Alice, I think I could probably stay on for another 30 minutes or so. I said the 2-hour cutoff because usually like, my brain will be fried by now. But
I do personally want to wrap up in like 20 minutes. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right. So next person I got is Fury Notes. By the way, Brad, I didn't mean to like cut off while you were saying bye. We got Fury Notes. Let's keep it quick. Let's keep it 5-10 minutes. I want to keep it pretty quick. We got like at least 10 people backstage. Okay.
Or not. Okay. All right. So look, the first programmer was a woman. So I think there's like with this debate, there's a lack of perspective here. It's a bit of a bubble. Just what I see here, it's just like people are just mostly agreeing. So mostly because I was thinking before the debate, oh, wait a minute, when they agree with each other? I mean, they both hate John Anthony, so it's not much to go on.
Wait.
So, all right, so
where did that come from?
Hey, it's relevant. But
I don't hate John Anthony. I just think he's a very underdeveloped person, and he's,
I mean, I
degenerate, piece of shit. He's a degenerate trans-humping
Guys,
piece of shit.
Can we not get into John Anthony on my channel? I don't want
I'm sorry that Andrew got to like debate him before you, Kevin.
Well,
But okay.
John Anthony's scared of me. But anyway, dude, just
Well, yeah,
go
it
ahead,
seems so.
continue.
All right, so look, I mean, you said you always won your debates, right, Kevin? So, I noticed that when we debated, you really tried hard to strong arm me, and I mean, I did hold back quite a bit, and I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Man, you destroyed me so hard intellectually that I just couldn't handle it. And I'm still in denial to this day.
I find it hard to believe though, because it seems like you're just mocking me, like you're giving me like that.
It does seem like he's just mocking you. I agree.
It does look like that, but
it does seem like
the problem is it is true, unfortunately.
I won every.
It seems
I won
pretty
every
base that he's
debate.
mocking you, by the way.
So I mean,
I won every debate except for you, Fury Notes. You destroyed me so hard, and
yeah. So I wonder why I somehow won despite handicapping myself, saying less stuff than you, and you strong arming me and trying to change the subject.
Because your IQ is at least 50 points higher than mine. That's why. That's the only reason I can.
Kevin, I just want the truth. I don't want this stuff here. Just
Kevin, he is asking a fair question. I mean, I think, yeah.
And to be honest,
what's the question? He's just going to be like, dude, Kevin, remember the time where I fucking bodied you intellectually?
No, but
and that's all he's saying.
Okay, but I'm just wondering why if I won, and you didn't, how come you didn't like get influenced by that? Because it seems like you weren't, and you just like. And it's really just disappointing for me, because a lot of your your whole insult superhero thing is just so wrong with like Nietzsche thing.
Wait, Fury, do you have anything you want to say about this topic, or
Well, he did try to strong arm me, and I mean, this debate here is just two people mostly agreeing with each other, and it's kind of like just to each other for fun.
Fury, how long? I don't remember how long ago this happened, but
About
do you remember that because Erudite was the moderator,
right?
She had to like help you throughout the debate.
Well, yeah, that's the funny things. And
then we had to bring on like 9 people to come help you after. It's just like,
yeah, but
if you want, dude, if it helps you sleep at night, you absolutely bodied me in that debate. Okay.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't help you sleep at night because it seems. It seems like,
dude. Can we talk about something that's related to this topic, please?
Otherwise, the point is he's stronger than me. So I'm denying the fact. No.
Fury, I do want to talk about the actual topic at hand. Do you have anything you want to comment?
Yeah. So I had to ask Kevin quick. Who was the first? Which gender was the first programmer?
According to you, it was a woman.
So if it was according to me, why do you not believe that?
I never said I didn't believe it, man. What are you talking? When did I ever say that?
I mean, it says according to me.
Hold on, guys. I'm not.
I mean, it might be like pushing too hard, maybe.
Hold on, Alex. I'm not meaning this in a Fury. I don't have contempt for you. I promise I don't. I just.
No, my problem is you ignore me and then you just pretend you're right all the time.
Let him finish.
You have a personal demon against me that I don't even have towards you at all. Yeah, sure, a vendetta. Okay, so I'm sorry for whatever reason why you don't like me. Maybe I was a bit mean. Hold on. I'll admit maybe I was a bit mean to you in the past, and I apologize for that. Seriously. That's
the thing. That's you wonder why the Transphere like rejected you.
Wait, Fury, hang on. You stop. You gotta let him finish. You asked him a question.
Yeah.
Let's let him finish the question.
But look, Fury, this isn't the time to do this. Like we want to have people come on.
It's never a good time.
About this thing.
It's never a good time.
Okay.
Fury,
there's never always never a good time.
Fury, I wish you the best.
Is this going to be like personal squabbles?
Yeah,
Fury,
I don't even know.
Hit him up on I don't know, privately.
Look, I want to redo the debate again, please.
Please don't. Please, what? About what? About what?
I want you to do that debate again, please, because that's not. I mean, otherwise, I would have to break it down and then show it off to everybody else.
No, that's not. I'm sorry, man. Don't take this the wrong way. That's not worth my time. I just don't want to do that.
That's not worth your time.
No.
I mean,
It's too bad you misunderstand Mr. Nietzsche when it comes to superheroes. So, or in just anything regarding that, because it's weird to me that you say anime is better than superheroes, which really means it's the same.
Okay, guys, I'm not getting into superhero shit. Thank you, Fury. We'll see you next time, buddy. Thanks for coming on. I just don't care about the superhero crap at all.
Yeah, I just.
It seems like he's pissed at you, man. I don't know why. I didn't.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I do want to say.
I didn't watch that.
Second. I do want to say
what happened, but
yeah, it's nothing really. I do want to say this. I mean, when I've been off of YouTube now for 2 months, and I've been mulling over this idea of contempt for a while. I think a lot of times it's very fun when you do these debate formats to like dunk on people and to like flex your intellectual whatever. And I apologize to anybody who I made them feel insecure or stupid about themselves. That's not, maybe that was my intention at the time, but if it was, I apologize because I just don't think that's a constructive thing.
Why would you apologize to that?
Why
would you apologize for how they feel?
Sure, but I would say God, I'm going to bring up Nietzsche again. Okay, sorry to be cringe about it, but
now you see why this society is a little bit more feminine. It's because of shit like that, Kevin.
No, hold on. So this is what I mean. Okay, so Nietzsche had this idea of three stages.
There's empathy and there's caring about people.
Yeah. No. I do think empathy is a little bit more of a feminine trait in general. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but like I think it's more indifference. I would say. So when I was. The second stage of the spirit, according to Nietzsche, is the lion, where you're constantly reacting to stuff and you form your opinions based off of negating other people's opinions. I think that was the state of mind that I had for most of my 20s. I'm almost 30 now, and my perspective has sort of changed, where I'm like, I'm going to react to people who I think are bad for the world, sure, but in general, I'm trying to be more
when you have kids, so don't worry about it.
Okay. Hey, maybe that's it. I mean, I might have kids in the next few years. Maybe I'm becoming a little bit more fatherly and less like the bully older brother that just wants to beat you up, So, Fury. I'm sorry. I wouldn't say I have nothing but love to you, but I don't have hate towards you. So I just want to let you know that.
Okay, let's go next to Luke's, and then we'll do maybe one or two more people after that. Go ahead.
Kevin, Andrew, nice to see y'all.
Hi, Lou. How you doing?
Nice to you, Kevin.
Lou, the only reason I know Andrew is because of you. So,
yep,
you kind of made this debate happen in a way.
Whoa! Okay, it was me that made it happen. It's not.
Oh well, fair enough. You too.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Lou.
Okay, so Alex brought up a really interesting riddle. I would like to bring up another really interesting riddle. The riddle of steel. So, both of y'all familiar with it?
No,
I'm not.
No. Conan the Barbarian.
I know Conan the Barbarian, but I don't know the riddle of steel.
I've never heard the riddle. Maybe you can explain that.
Oh God,
I haven't seen the movie. Granted, I know Arnold's in it.
I can tell you what's best in life, according to Conan.
Wait. You're a fan of Nietzsche and you haven't seen Conan the Barbarian?
Nah, I haven't read Berserk either. I'm getting into it, but apparently Berserk is like filled with Nietzschean themes. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for fucking up my entire call in.
Sorry.
We'll just explain what it is, and then he can respond.
Doesn't actually matter what the riddle of steel is, technically. So, whenever the person dies, they go before the god Crom, and then they have to answer the riddle of steel. And if they get it wrong, they get cast out of Valhalla. Doesn't matter. My entire point was, Kevin, when did you become Thulsa Doom?
Thulsa Doom? Who's that?
James Earl Jones and Conan the Barbarian.
I'm sorry, man. When it comes to like
he was the bad guy.
Pop culture references, I'm pretty. When it comes to pop culture references, I'm pretty retarded. So I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. My entire colon has been ruined.
Right. It was like the whole hero's journey was that guy wanted power and influence and this and that, and a singular man brought his ass down, which has happened in the past in history as well.
Well, not just that. It's that the will is the power in the allegory.
Right.
Well, I you know what? Thanks for bringing this up. I'm gonna look into it more. I mean, I love Arnold, so I don't know why I haven't watched it.
Yeah,
I know it's a
just to only watch the
movie
first
of
one.
a different.
Only watch the first one. The only cool thing that happened the second one was Arnold Schwarzenegger knocks out a horse that's running with his bare hands. That's kind of cool. But other than that, worthless movie.
I'll drop a couple of links in the Discord for you.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay,
Thanks,
cool.
man.
Look, is that all you had?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know this thing. Yeah. Next time, I'll read up on it. I apologize.
All right, thanks, buddy. We'll see you later.
Thanks,
Lou. Sorry. Let me bring on Juan. He's been waiting. Hello. Juan, speak now, forever hold your peace. 3.
So you didn't have to bring me on. That was my bad, dude.
You're good. So what's up?
That's okay.
I didn't have really anything. So yeah, you didn't have that. Maybe just I was just bringing up the point of when you talked about the women's rights thing, where they didn't want the right to vote. Often it's left out that was because they would come with the draft, and that's the main reason why they didn't want the right to vote. So that's often left out. That's really, I don't even have to come on for that.
Yeah, because they don't fight wars. Because they can't. Because they die quickly and get raped and every other horrible thing and demoralize all the men. And it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea to have a coexistent battlefield military.
I would agree for the most part on that. I mean, it's hard to argue against that. But I think that should be brought up whenever, because everyone was like, oh, they didn't even want the right to vote. I mean, you can't leave that part out, you know? It's like...
Well, that's just one. I think it's one part of many parts. But yeah, I agree with you that was definitely an anti-suffragette talking point for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they still didn't have to do the draft, did they? Fucking bastards.
Yeah, they found out they adjusted it so they wouldn't.
Still didn't even have to fucking do the draft because they're women. They can't go fight the war. It's ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's fucking ridiculous. But anyway, fair enough. Juan.
I mean, maybe they can be drafted for
to be paymasters.
Like
sure.
Well, like the support staff. Like okay, so when you go to war.
Paymasters and cooks.
Yeah. So, I mean, but when you go to war, the vast majority of people, even if they're like a soldier wearing fatigues and stuff, they're not actually seeing combat. They're doing other stuff behind the scenes, which is still very important.
In modernity, this is true. I agree.
Yeah, I was gonna.
But even back in the day, it was
the rigorism of the military lifestyle is not something that women adapt to easily when they're in the field. I mean, just try to imagine that you're in a trench. Fighting against a male army, and then you have 100 women whose periods are all synced up in the trenches with you. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun, does it? Doesn't sound like it would be. That doesn't sound like the kind of army that I want in the trench with me, Kevin.
Hey, I never said either which way about it. I'm indifferent. I haven't even thought about it, to be honest.
Yes,
we got to drop ammunition and tampons immediately, ladies. We got to drop ammunition and tampons.
Yeah, so I want to move it forward. You have anything else you want to say, Juan?
No, that was just the point. Also, like, a lot of the war also done by like drones and shit. Like, women can definitely handle shit like that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's not my main point of my argument,
modern warfare. No matter what, you're always going to come down eventually to infantry. No matter what, it's like 2 professional militaries now who went to war, 2 nations who went to war. The destructive power is such that they would blow up so much so quickly that you would still end up with a bunch of infantry kind of micro battles all over the place. I mean, because the overwhelming amount of force, like you can't even imagine what just a regular battleship can do. A battleship can just lay waste to an entire coastline of a nation. One battleship. It's like the destructive power of warfare now is incredible. And we've never really seen it unleashed, and I don't want to see it unleashed, to be honest.
Well, I mean, the Americans did it.
The military is utilizing AI more and more to basically have the machines do it. There's also they're testing machines who are literally going to be soldiers, which are basically unkillable by regular bullets. So I agree with you at this point in time. You're right, but it's kind of transitioning to more and more hands-on.
I would also. We actually do have a real life example. The first Gulf War, where Iraq apparently had like this elite infantry fighting force, and it didn't matter because the Americans bombed the shit out of them, and then it just kind of ended. I mean, I'm sure there were some infantry skirmishes and stuff here and there, but yeah, I mean, just to add to Andrew's point, it's kind of warfare's changed a bit, you know.
All right,
Let
me keep it moving. There's two people I want to get through before we wrap up. So thank you, Juan. Appreciate you.
G.I. Jane was a myth.
That's all I had to say.
We'll see you. We'll see you next time. Okay, let's quickly bring on this person. The machine lies. Hello.
Hey, greetings. How's everybody doing? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Nice and loud. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I got this kind of $20 microphone here, but
Okay, I'll manually adjust your microphone. So,
thank you. If the showrunners could just adjust my microphone, that would be perfect.
I already took care of it. So what's up, man? What do you want to discuss?
I've definitely read the genealogy of morals right here. I'm saying right.
Sweet.
I mean, it's weird. I got the whole thing marked up right here. I really studied, Nietzsche's philosophy hardcore, especially Beyond Good and Evil, and also the Antichrist. And I think in the it's interesting in the Antichrist, he brings up, first of all, in Beyond Good and Evil, he says that that democratic values are the heir of the Christian movement. So he kind of says that he kind of blames Christianity for liberal values, and that's kind of a strange
and socialism.
Now,
and socialism as well. He believes that Christianity or socialism is an inevitable result of Christianity because it's inherently slave morality. Yeah.
That's right. So I mean, a lot of people have taken to task this historical view. Especially now in our modern age, we see how feminist values are kind of piggybacked on the liberal values, but you see the patriarchal system kind of opposes that. And then Nietzsche's solution is more authoritarianism, not less. Look at in the Antichrist in sections 58 through 60, where he talks about Islam, and he says, and one of the things he brings up about Islam, he says Islam assumes men as the rulers of the society, whereas the same can't be found. Obviously, he doesn't think that about Christianity because he's criticizing Christianity as being in line with liberal values, or so to speak, or the equality of the sexes, or because he says it aspires towards collectivism. So I think you're presenting Nietzsche in a very strange way. What do you think about that? Because his solution would be more authoritarianism. He's not saying that's a fact of life, you know?
No. So what other works of Nietzsche have you read? So have you read the Gay Signs, Twilight of the Idols, any of those? It doesn't matter. But basically, the thing is with Nietzsche is that
those are some of his earlier works. I think Beyond Good and Evil and Genealogy of Morals and Antichrist reflect his later, more pure philosophy.
Twilight of the Idols came after Beyond Good and Evil. But
Twilight of the Idols is making the same point against Twilight of the Idols is making the same point against Greek philosophy. So it's just I've read significant parts of that work as well.
Okay. So hold on. This is going to get deeply philosophical. I'm going to try to make it entertaining so people don't drop off too much. But basically, Nietzsche.
Well, the last two calls were fails. I mean, I'm just saying. But
yeah. All right. So look, Nietzsche. He doesn't offer too many prescriptions. Again, you have to understand his fundamental belief is the will to power, and he also believes that there are two different types of people in this world: people of the nobility, the higher men, and people who are the herd. And so what he believes is that inevitably the herd don't have the ability to govern themselves, and everything in terms of power is fought amongst the higher men. So he is technically pro aristocratic values and the nobility. I'm confused. You said he was critical of
where do women's rights fit into this picture? I'm very confused about that. Because he would be anti-liberal, anti-feminist, pro-patriarchal, pro-authoritarian. I just don't understand.
No, I mean, I think this is a mistake a lot of people make, is that they look at Nietzsche as a prescriptive philosopher, and he's not.
He is giving moral prescriptions, and his prescription
Where?
is more patriarchy, more
No. He's saying he said that that's basically inevitable, and that more so the power that's happening there based on the. Well, you don't really have a good understanding of Nietzsche, brother. I'm sorry.
No. I think you're. You said Nietzsche doesn't give prescriptions. That's ultimately completely false. Nietzsche.
I mean, he gives
on moral philosophy.
No, he gives prescriptions on an individual. I mean, what does he think about morality? Hold on. Wait, what does he think?
Hold on.
Explain what morality is from a.
You said I don't understand Nietzsche, and then you said Nietzsche doesn't give prescriptive.
Hold on.
What the
he
fuck
does from an individual to indivial basis. Let me tell you this, okay? What does Nietzsche
you've never
believe?
Read Nietzsche in Genealogy of Morals. He gives hundreds of prescriptive points. He says Islam should have conquered Europe. So what the fuck
based on the will to power, and that's not in the Genealogy of Morals.
Can we bring it back?
What does hold on? What does Nietzsche believe? Hold on. What does Nietzsche believe about morality? What is morality to Nietzsche? That's the central kind of question that he's talking about in Beyond Good and Evil.
He believes morals are fossilized violence, my friend. He's a Machiavellian in terms of morality. So I don't think you understand Nietzsche's morality.
No. What is morality? Hold on.
What is morality?
What is morality?
What is morality to Nietzsche, or what is morality?
Yes. No. What is morality to Nietzsche?
It's fossilized violence. Morals are fossilized violence.
Can you explain what fossilized violence is, then, please?
I think it makes a lot of sense. The way Nietzsche put it, I'm using his own terminology to present the case. So if you've never heard that
terminology,
before, I'm surprised. But he believes
he said a bunch of different stuff, so you can explain it, right? You can explain what fossilized.
That's what the fuck I'm doing. You keep
is.
cutting me off. Yes. I'm explaining it in Nietzsche's own terms, and you're saying that you've never heard of these terms.
Once you explain the term, you have to explain what the term is.
And then you're telling me that I don't understand Nietzsche. I mean, that's fucking amazing.
You don't.
What the
because
fuck are
you can't explain what morality is to Nietzsche.
Why are
you're not letting me explain it.
What does fossilized violence mean?
You're critiquing the terms when I'm using Nietzsche's own terms. So, and
I'm asking you what fossilized violence means.
What the fuck? You don't understand Nietzsche.
Okay, if you understand him, you should be able to explain what fossilized violence is.
Nietzsche doesn't give prescriptive terms? Wait, hold on. Nietzsche never gives prescriptive terms.
Just explain.
What the fuck are you talking about?
You brought this up.
You're like, hey, liberalism.
No. I said, hey, what is morality to Nietzsche? You're like, it's fossilized violence. I'm like, explain fossilized violence, and you can't.
This guy's telling everybody he doesn't understand Nietzsche. I'm using Nietzsche's own terminology, and he doesn't even recognize it because he
explain fossilized. Explain fossilized violence.
I'd be happy to. But stop cutting me off, and I'll explain it to you, my friend. What the fuck are you doing? Like, okay.
I'm silent. Go ahead, explain it.
Go ahead.
I like this room. I get to breathe and talk and shit. Fossilized violence is the concept that the violence of the past, the lesser groups over time, they start to make society towards collectivist values. Basically, morals are a form in society. Don't steal, don't harm other people. This is because people have stolen and harmed other people in the past. So the results of this continued violence is why we develop morality. That's what he says.
Okay.
He
so in simpler terms, what morality is to Nietzsche is you have to go to the underlying. Hold on. You have to go to the underlying metaphysic or lack thereof of Nietzschean philosophy, which is the will to power. So each and every one of us have something that we're trying to will, sometimes in a collective effort or an individual effort. And when you're not able to express that will correctly or the way in which you want to express it, then you end up developing morals as a cope for that. So the aristocracy originally, he makes a distinction between good and bad, good and evil in the genealogy of morals. So good and bad is what the nobles.
He's saying you're saying this process is inevitable, but is he saying this process is a good thing? And doesn't he give prescriptive remedies against this process?
Well, he doesn't say that process is a good thing. He tries to look at it purely from a descriptive lens. Now, what happens? No.
He also looked at it from a prescriptive lens.
Okay, can you explain the prescriptive lens, please?
All right, wait, guys. I'm going to
be authoritarian.
This is turning into a niche debate. Wait, hang on. Yeah. I don't care. It's completely irrelevant. I'll let it go for about 10 minutes, but I do want to keep it moving. So why don't you guys just exchange contacts? You guys can set up a debate, talk about this for hours. I think that's much better than trying to do it on here with the topics totally different. So I'm going to meet both of you. But yeah, you guys can exchange contacts. You guys can set it up.
Yes, you can email me, Machine Lies, KevinRayWilder@gmail.com. I'm happy to have a full discussion about this because this is the type of stuff that I love. So
yeah, no worries. Yeah. I'll try to get in contact with you.
Yeah.
Have a blessed
Remember,
day.
KevinRayWilder@gmail.com. Just put your username in the title.
Yeah, my thing is the Machine Lies 0 @gmail. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds
you'd be
good.
happy. Yeah, no worries.
All right,
I'm glad to have a fellow reader of Nietzsche, even though we disagree.
Appreciate you. Thanks, buddy. All right, I want to do one last person who's been waiting. I told him 5 minutes maximum. So 5 minutes, Mr. Watcher, and then we got to wrap up.
All right. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. So I've been taking notes on this. This one's pretty interesting. So I think, so both of you agree that men are the enforcer warrior class, right? Like the warrior class, the enforcer, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what you all both agree.
Yeah, we both.
It's basically consisted almost entirely of men.
Okay. So it's a matter of like the manipulation of the men is the issue here is what I'm seeing, right? Because like you were saying to Andrew that like it's the fact that men are being manipulated, right? And the person in power at the top of the hierarchy is going to be the ultimate authority on who is, manipulating these men, right? That's your stance. It's the
you could maybe manipulate is a little bit of it's kind of a normatively loaded term. It's basically because honestly, like you hear manipulate, you can't help it. Put a negative.
I think he understands though, Kevin. It's like manipulate, coerce,
maybe influence.
kind of
I think
influence, all
maybe,
kinds of different things.
Yeah. Because they can influence those people either positively or negatively. Sometimes it can be in the form of manipulation. Sometimes it could be rooted in truth. Yeah.
No, okay. I understand. So, and the thing is, so it's basically just, it's the ability that the men are just being manipulated then. So with Andrew's point, he basically said that like, it's the overall entity of the warrior class to not decide to be manipulated. Right? Because because if you understand female nature, right, and that's why I agree with you that also, I'm sorry to get like sidetracked, but it's the matter of the time, right? So I would agree with you in modern day time where society is a gynocentric feminist hellscape and men are basically women worshippers, right? And I would agree with you right now, it's women are socially superior and gaslighting and manipulating men and coercing them, and because men don't have many options. But in Andrew's case, in the the biblical times, men had that knowledge to not be manipulated by women.
Well, even now, though, right? You would have to say that it's men who are allowing this to happen. The gynocentric society that women can't really enforce that external to men. So that's the whole problem. Like it's so funny to me this whole time. Like kind of Kevin's saying, the whole red pill manosphere is trying to convince men that they don't have to be manipulated, that they don't have to be part of the gynocentric society, that they don't have to be a part of any of this, that anytime they want, they can put their foot down, and women, the bitches basically have to behave, right? That bitch now has to behave because you know what she's up to. And it's like, that is uniquely only something that men can do. As far as enforcement goes, where it's like, okay, absent manipulation, go ahead and enforce your rights. They can't. Only men can. Then again, you just kind of get back to this paradox over and over again.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that I think from Kevin's point of view, he's more talking about it in modern times where men are being manipulated the most in history. Like that's a fact. Like as of right now in the gynocentric social order, like men are literal. Like I literally see like men will literally fight for their queens, and because all women are queens, they'll worship the queens.
It's a simpocalypse.
It's a simpocalypse, and I just think like simps are the problem because you guys said there would be two different factions.
What are you doing to cure the problem? You're telling simps stop being simps, and if the second you're not simps, the power of women goes away, right? However, let's assume. Hang on. But let's assume for a second that it was reversed, and the women were all simps for men. They were all just simping for men, okay? And they were like, "Wait a second, we don't have to simp for men." And men decided, "Yeah, the fuck you do," or else, right? they couldn't do anything about it. That's where this kind of grand paradox comes into place. You see what I'm saying?
So the thing is that, you know, simpery, for lack of a better term, is inevitable. It's always going to be there. It's even among some of the best of us, but especially amongst like technically the lowest quality guys of us. And so that's always going to be the majority of men, compared to the minority of men who aren't going to be simps. And I think women inherently understand this, and they will manipulate that to get what they want, for better or for worse. You know, again, it's sometimes it's a willing. It's a willing manipulation or willing influence. A lot of times the guys know what is going on and they still go with it anyway because they don't want to lose it or whatever. Sometimes they have no idea, you know. I just, to watch, or to address your point directly.
Yeah, but this all relies on the consent of men, regardless.
Yeah, of understanding female nature.
Being
manipulated.
I bet those glasses make you see better.